It was from the Cataclysm. I can illuminate the technological tree. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, Mars Synchronous Orbit. 2 months later, 65 days later, to be exact. The fourth planet in the solar system, Mars 3 landing capsule slowly flew above the synchronous orbit of Mars, calling. Houston, this is Pathfinder 1. We have successfully entered orbit. Please reply if you receive it. Radio. Waves were sent from the front landing capsule, flying across 82 million kilometers towards the blue Earth. I searched for a long time, but couldn't find the data. I will ignore the relative movement of Mars and Earth in these 2 months. Earth, Houston Ground Command Center. User. Chris, wearing a white coat, stood on the command desk with a nervous look, staring at the big screen in front of him. Hasn't there been any news from Pathfinder 1 yet, Chris? Asked in a deep voice. The researcher on the side shook his head and quickly replied, not yet, damn. Chris's eyes twitched slightly twice, and a bad thought flashed through his mind. Will something go wrong? According to the original calculation, Pathfinder 1 should have successfully entered the synchronous orbit of Mars 5 minutes ago. This is the first time in the entire human history that a manned spaceflight has lasted 82 million kilometers. Apart from other things, the communication delay of several minutes is enough to make people drink a pot. The distance of 82 million kilometers means that the electromagnetic wave signal needs 546.6 seconds to make a round trip. In other words, it takes more than 9 minutes for a message to be transmitted from Pathfinder 1 to the Earth, and then from the Earth to Pathfinder 1, not considering the response time in between. What does 9 minutes mean? Simply put, if an emergency occurs during the landing process, by the time the ground command center responds, it is estimated that the ashes of the 3 astronauts will be evenly scattered on the ground of Mars. Professor, will Pathfinder be in trouble? Morton asked anxiously from the side. Professor Chris's eyes twitched again, and the anxiety in his heart increased a few points again. But facing the director of NASA, he still forced himself to suppress his anxiety and shook his head slowly, saying, Director Morton, please be patient. The distance between the Earth and Mars is too far, and it is normal for the calculation to have some errors. Moulton sighed deeply, smiled bitterly and said, Professor, if the Pathfinder program fails this time, Mr. Albert will probably not let me go. Who won't? Chris shrugged lightly and said helplessly. What a joke. The United States has spent a lot of money on the Pathfinder program. If it fails, let alone them, Albert will probably be forced to step down to vent public anger. Just as the two looked at each other and sighed, Andrew's voice came from the radio. Call Houston, Professor. Chris was slightly stunned, and then a touch of joy burst out in his eyes. Nice. A burst of cheers and applause sounded. Moulton, who was standing aside, was slightly relieved when he saw this scene. It seems that he can stay in the position of NASA director for 2 more days. He reached out and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, then made a cross on his chest and folded his hands with a pious look. It seems that God is still looking after America. Ahem. Everyone, calm down. Professor Chris picked up the microphone with a smile on his face and said softly, the next is the highlight. Cheer up. Chris's words calmed down the researchers. That's right. Successfully reaching the orbit of Mars can only be said to have completed 20% of the entire plan. Next, they will face a greater danger landing on Mars. Chris turned on the radio communication switch and said in a steady tone, Houston received. Everything is going according to plan, and the landing procedure will be started after arriving at the predetermined location. Because the communication delay is too long, Pathfinder 1 has a very high degree of autonomy. It can be said that most events can be decided independently except for some necessary situations, and all of this also tests the astronaut's ability to adapt to changes. Therefore, Andrew became the captain of the Pathfinder program with his excellent performance in training. In a synchronous orbit 17,000 kilometers from the surface of Mars, 3 landing capsules are flying slowly at a speed of 3.55 km/s. Mars orbital speed. Andrew quietly looked at the vast red planet outside the porthole, and a trace of worry appeared in the depths of his eyes. It's been 10 minutes, why hasn't NASA responded yet? Bruno's voice suddenly sounded, breaking the original tranquility in the landing capsule. Andrew's worry became more and more intense. After a moment of silence, he whispered, "Wait a little longer, maybe Houston is delayed." Although he said this, Andrew couldn't help but reach out and grab the microphone, ready to call Houston again. A noisy electric current sound suddenly came from the radio. "Houston, received. Proceed according to the plan." Because of the long distance, Professor Chris's voice seemed particularly vague. But this did not prevent the 3 astronauts from understanding the content. "Okay, everyone, cheer up." Andrew took the lead in putting on the helmet of the spacesuit and sat back in the chair. There are 20 minutes left to the scheduled location. Prepare to release the satellite. After fastening his seatbelt, he gently pushed the button on the console in front of him. A signal was transmitted to the Pathfinder 3 landing capsule that was following behind. A few seconds later, a satellite mounted on the outside of the landing capsule was released. This satellite, with both communication and remote sensing functions, will be the bridge for them to communicate with the Earth in the future. Satellite release successful. Propulsion system successfully started. Satellite working signal received. Joe eyes report came from the side. Looking at the deceleration point getting closer and closer on the screen, Andrew swallowed slightly and his face became more serious. "Bruno, how are Pathfinders 2 and 3? A few seconds later, in good condition. Deceleration can be carried out at any time." Andrew nodded, looking at the preset deceleration point getting closer and closer, and said in a deep voice, "Prepare to start the landing procedure." A tremor came from the soles of their feet, and the 3 Pathfinder landing capsules began to adjust their postures and aim the thruster nozzles at the bottom in the direction of travel. With a blue tail flame, the landing module began the deceleration procedure. The expressions on the faces of the 3 astronauts became more and more solemn. 3 hours later, they will face the most dangerous time of landing on Mars, the legendary 7 minutes of terror. Chapter 102, 7 minutes of terror. 3 hours later, notice, we're entering the Martian atmosphere. Looking at the height value on the screen in front of him, Andrew's heart beat violently. Next comes the legendary 7 minutes of terror. What is 7 minutes of terror? To put it simply, it takes about 7 minutes to complete the series of actions from the time the aircraft enters the Martian atmosphere to successfully landing on the surface of Mars. From the moment of entering the atmosphere, every second is filled with great terror. It can be said that if there is the slightest mistake, the Pathfinder landing module, with a speed of 100,000 kilometers per hour, will fall directly to the surface of Mars. The moment Andrew finished speaking, a strong vibration came from all over the landing cabin. At an altitude of 125 kilometers, the landing module began to cut into the atmosphere at a specific angle. This step is crucial. Once the angle of entry is too small, the landing module will not be able to enter the atmosphere. If the angle is too large, the landing module will be overheated by the atmosphere and burned. Andrew gritted his teeth and stared at the screen in front of him. After seeing the information that 3 landing capsules had successfully entered the atmosphere, he breathed a sigh of relief. It is different from ordinary landings on Mars because there are 3 landing modules this time, and the risks they face are several times greater. If Pathfinder 2 fails, they will lose the return capsule and the Mars module, which means they will be trapped and die on Mars. If Pathfinder 3 failed, they would lose vital supplies. Although they could choose to return directly without endangering their lives, the Pathfinder plan also failed. As for the failure of Pathfinder 1, that should be the easiest. At least they won't feel any pain. As the landing module successfully entered the atmosphere, the onboard computer quickly began executing the next step. Drop the trim wings deployed successfully. Current speed, Mach 3. As the prompt sounded, the trimming wings of the 3 landing modules unfolded at the same time, starting the angle of attack trimming phase. Andrew's heart rate accelerated again, breathing in the oxygen in the spacesuit under the massive secretion of adrenaline. Andrew's concentration reached the peak of his life at this time point. Even in the extremely bumpy landing cabin, he could still clearly see every character flashing quickly on the screen. Trim. Successful. Get ready to pop the parachute. Beep. 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 Parachute ejection failed. Switch to manual control. When he saw this line of characters in front of him, Andrew's eyes suddenly widened. WTF? Are you kidding me? Would you give me such a fault at this time? Andrew kept cursing the NASA Space Agency in his heart, but his hand movements did not slow down at all, and he quickly grabbed the ring on the side. Click. Andrew's expression suddenly changed. He didn't pull. Andrew, open the parachute quickly. Bruno on the side looked at the rapidly falling altitude value with dizziness. Andrew's face turned red, and he pulled hard with all his strength. Bang! A strong pulling feeling came. The parachute opened successfully. Seeing the rapidly decreasing speed on the screen, Andrew breathed a sigh of relief. Holy shit. Bruno looked at the console in front of him with a pale face. Labor and management no longer believe in NASA. Suddenly, Andrew realized a problem. His expression suddenly changed, and he shouted loudly, Bruno, look at number 2 and number 3. If the parachutes of Pathfinder 2 and 3 did not pop up, Andrew could not imagine the consequences at all. The moment he heard Andrew's words, Bruno felt his heart skip a beat. His lips trembled slightly as he pressed the button on the console. Seeing the flashing characters on the display screen, Bruno breathed a sigh of relief. No, they are both fine. The crisis was temporarily over. Bruno joked with a pale face. Haha, NASA seems to care more about those supplies. Bruno's hell joke naturally drew the eyes of Andrew and Joey. Drop. The landing legs successfully deployed. The range and speed sensor starts working. As the beep sounded, a string of data quickly flashed across the screen. Andrew glanced at the altitude data point. 1.5 kilometers. We're almost there. Andrew's expression moved slightly, and he said softly. As Andrew finished speaking, a line of characters appeared on the screen again. The main engine is ready to start. The main engine started successfully. A strong vibration came from the soles of the feet, and correspondingly, there was an even stronger sense of deceleration. After dozens of seconds, the feeling of deceleration gradually disappeared, and the 3 landing modules hovered over Mars relying on their main engines. Optical imaging starts. Mobile obstacle avoidance is on. The landing module slowly adjusted its position in the air. When the altitude slowly dropped to 100 meters, the laser 3-dimensional imager started. With the help of optical and laser imaging, onboard computers rapidly analyze Martian surface data. After a few seconds, the computer found a relatively flat location with less rocks. The computer precisely adjusted the operating power of the main engine and controlled the landing module to slowly lower its altitude 5 meters. 4 meters. As the altitude on the screen continued to decrease, the 3 astronauts became more and more nervous. This is the last step. With a slight vibration coming from the soles of their feet, a long-awaited character suddenly appeared on the screen. Succeed. The landing module was silent. We succeeded. Andrew's voice sounded in the team's radio channel. Hire number 2 and number 3. Successful landing. Bruno confirmed in a brisk tone. They are on our left, and we can see them through the porthole. Andrew quickly turned his head and looked at the porthole on the left. Sure enough, Pathfinder number 2 and Pathfinder number 3 stood quietly on a red surface of Mars. Success. We succeeded. Joey on the side excitedly unbuckled his seatbelt and threw himself into Bruno's arms. Wow. Andrew on the side looked at the scene in front of him and whistled softly. Pay attention, everyone. There are surveillance cameras here. Joey's face was slightly ruddy. He raised his head and glared at Andrew through the glass mask, then returned to his chair with a sullen face. Andrew ignored the 2 of them, took a deep breath to calm down, and turned on the radio communication switch, calling. Houston, this is Pathfinder 1. We have landed successfully. Repeat, we have landed successfully. The astronauts are in good health and can perform extravehicular operations at any time. Chapter 103. The lunar mining plan is ready to start. United States. Houston Ground Command Center. The moment the sound from Mars was heard, Thunderous applause rang out throughout the Houston Command Center. God bless America. Looking at the researchers, who stood up and clapped vigorously, Professor Chris' eyes were filled with tears and he murmured to himself. Director Morton on the side also had a relaxed smile on his face. His position as director was saved. Professor Chris slowly stretched out his right hand and gestured in the air. The noisy applause and discussion in the Houston Command Center gradually stopped, and every researcher's face flushed slightly, and their eyes flashed with excitement when they looked at Chris. When the Houston Command Center was completely quiet, Professor Chris swallowed slightly, reached out to pick up the microphone, turned on the radio switch and whispered, "Houston received. Congratulations. You are the heroes of America. Now, I declare that the extravehicular operation will begin." Perhaps because of being too excited, Professor Chris's voice was a little hoarse. But even so, the conversation between Andrew and Professor Chris, which lasted nearly 10 minutes, spread throughout the United States at that moment. The United States will never give up. The Pathfinder project has been successfully implemented and has now successfully landed on the Utopia plains. Greetings from Mars. The United States has once again made history. A small step for the United States, a big step for mankind. The United States will rise again. At the moment when the Pathfinder series successfully landed on Mars, all newspapers rushed to print the newspapers of the day. The overwhelming news instantly drowned every American, just as President Albert said that day, "I don't allow any American to not know this news." At the moment the news was reported, countless American citizens spontaneously took to the streets and began to celebrate this historic moment. The Twitter server even crashed because of this incident. Ha ha ha. I knew it. Sometimes if you don't push NASA, they don't know how capable they are. God is with America. Is Zaya still landing on the moon? Ha ha ha. By the time their lunar palace plan is implemented, our American flag of freedom will have been planted on every inch of Mars. How can you lose when flying dragons? Tell me, how can you lose? I declare that the United States has won this round of space race. I declare your declaration valid. At the same time, Mars, Utopia plane point. The hatch of the Pathfinder 1 landing module slowly opened, and 3 astronauts wearing bulky spacesuits walked down the gangway to the landing module point. For the first time, human footprints appeared on the red surface of Mars. Let's go. We have to speed up. Andrew looked up at the sky, then looked down at the time on his watch, and said in a deep voice, "It will be dark in a few hours." As the planet with the highest similarity to the Earth in the solar system, the length of a day on Mars is almost the same as that on Earth, about 40 minutes longer. It's probably too late today, right? Bruno roughly estimated the time and whispered in the team's radio channel, "It will take at least 10 hours to unfold and build the Mars cabin." Andrew frowned slightly and turned to look at Joey beside him. "Joey, how long can the supplies in the landing cabin last?" Joey thought for a few seconds and quickly responded, "If we count the consumption of our extravehicular operations, there is probably 2 days of oxygen left. That is to say." Andrew's face changed slightly. "If we want to ensure safety, we must complete the construction of the Mars cabin before nightfall tomorrow." "I'm afraid so." Hearing Joey's answer, Andrew felt heavy in his heart. It seems that there is plenty of time, but due to the limitations of the spacesuits, they need to replenish oxygen every 3 hours of work, and then take into account the time spent on the road. "Let's do this." After a brief thought, Andrew quickly gave an order. "Bruno, you and I will install the number 1 and number 2 Mars cabins first. Joey, you are responsible for installing the air circulation module and the power supply module." The US Mars cabin consists of 5 truncated cone-shaped cabins. Among them, cabin number 1 is the most critical, which has a large number of scientific research equipment, and even the main control computer is in cabin number 1. Cabin number 2 is the astronaut living cabin. Cabin number 3 is the warehouse. Cabin number 4 is the Mars planting unit, and cabin number 5 is the airlock cabin. At that time, several astronauts will try to grow some crops on Mars to verify the possibility of colonizing Mars in the future. In order to facilitate installation, the Mars cabin has an autonomous deployment function. What the astronauts need to do is to install various functional modules and precision instruments after the Mars cabin is successfully deployed. At the same time, the first laboratory of Zia country. In just 2 months. A large factory building was built next to the laboratory. Unlike ordinary factories, there is no worker inside these factories. Only rows of flexible manipulators and various mechanical processing equipment. Standing at the door of a factory, LV Yongchang looked at the scene inside the factory with a flash of amazement in his eyes. One by one, the manipulators flexibly grabbed the work pieces on the crawler and manipulated the machine tools to quickly process them into various parts. Although I have watched this scene many times, I still have an unrealistic feeling. Fang Zhu sighed from the side. I never thought that one day, all production tasks could be handed over to computers. If this scene spreads, I guess many workers will be laid off, right, Lu? Yongchang chuckled and shook his head slowly. It's not so exaggerated. Manipulating so many processing equipment at the same time has basically reached the limit of zero. If you want to expand it to the whole country, you will need at least a computer with hundreds of millions of qubits. Fang Zhu was silent for a while, then spoke again. According to the current progress, the first batch of automatic lunar mining equipment should be almost completed, right, Lu? Yongchang turned to look at the camera at the door of the factory. The next second, an electronic synthesized voice that was not much different from a real person's voice sounded. Professor, it is estimated that it will take another 20 hours and 36 minutes. The moment he heard the estimated time, Lu Yongchang's eyes suddenly lit up. Brother Zhu, let Baixuan and others get ready. The day after tomorrow, the lunar mining plan will be officially launched. Before Fang Zhu could reply, Zero spoke again. Professor, there is some news that I think you might be interested in. What? A trace of doubt flashed in Lu Yongchang's eyes. According to the latest news from NASA, the US Pathfinder has successfully landed on Utopia Plane. Chapter 104. LV Yongchang and Fang Zhu's faces changed slightly, as expected of the United States. Fang Zhu sighed slightly. The United States should be the best example of a centipede that is still alive even after death. LV Yongchang nodded in agreement, with a bit of regret in his tone. You're right. I didn't expect that 3 half-baked volunteers could successfully land on Mars. The United States is really lucky this time. Fang Zhu glanced at LV Yongchang beside him with a strange look on his face. This tone doesn't sound good. In order to maintain the core values of socialism, Fang Zhu hurriedly changed the subject. Ahem. So, what should we do? Just watch the United States stay on Mars for 3 months. At this time, LV Yongchang's eyes also became strange. Otherwise, what else do you want to do? Sent Zhuan number 1 to show it off. Ahem. Faced with LV Yongchang's straightforward words, Fang Zhu was caught off guard and choked by his own saliva. After catching his breath, he waved his hands and said, I didn't say that. Don't frame a good person. I'm a pacifist. Looking at Fang Zhu's righteous expression, LV Yongchang's eyes became more and more strange, and he emphasized, I know, nuclear peace, I know, Fang Zhu, you no shit. Looking at Fang Zhu's speechless expression, LV Yongchang's eyes flashed a smile, and he reached out and patted his shoulder gently. Okay, why do you care about the United States? Don't forget, Xiaguo has its own way to go. Beijing. Within the first ring road. Han Kaiming stood respectfully in front of the solid wood desk and asked softly, Chairman, are you looking for me? Hearing Han Kaiming's voice, the old man slowly put down the pen in his hand, reached out to take off his glasses, gently rubbed his sore eyes and said softly, Kaiming, how is Professor Lu doing recently? Han Kaiming's eyes moved slightly, and he said in detail, the first batch of automatic lunar mining equipment is almost ready. In addition, the second generation fusion reactor and Zhuan's second project are also being promoted simultaneously. In addition, Professor Lu is preparing to start the lunar mining plan the day after tomorrow. Member Li pondered for a moment and asked again, how far has the resource reserve plan progressed? Han Kaiming's expression suddenly became serious. 80% has been completed. In addition, most unnecessary light industries have begun to implement the transformation plan, and it is expected that a smooth transition can be completed within a year. Member Lee nodded with satisfaction. Okay, well done. In this case, the plan we prepared at the beginning should also be put on the table. Han Kaiming was slightly stunned. Point plan? What plan was prepared at the beginning? Looking at the meaningful look of Counselor Lee, Han Kaiming suddenly reacted. His breathing was slightly quickened, his lips trembled slightly, and he said with difficulty, "You mean, the new generation of leadership plan?" The Counselor nodded slowly and said, "When the natural disaster is approaching, a leader plays an extremely huge role for everyone. When nuclear fusion was announced, we had already tried it. Not only did the domestic response go well, but I was also very satisfied with Liu Yongchang's response. So, I want to take advantage of the launch of the Moon Palace plan to really push Liu Yongchang to the stage." Han Kaiming's pupils trembled, and a trace of entanglement flashed across his face. The so-called new generation of leadership plan, in very popular terms, is the so-called God-making plan. God-making has both advantages and disadvantages. Needless to say, the benefits are that once the plan is successful, when the natural disaster comes, Liu Yongchang can rely on his personal influence to call for 100 responses and gather the power of 1.4 billion people in Xia to open up a way out. As for the disadvantages, on the one hand, this plan is a great test of LV Yongchang's character. The Speaker of the Parliament had evaluated LV Yongchang as early as the first announcement of nuclear fusion technology. At that time, Xia Jiuo exposed LV Yongchang's identity and then did a lot of publicity for him, just to observe his reaction after becoming famous. As for letting him serve as the director of the space agency, it was to observe his reaction after he had great power. The result made the Speaker of the Parliament very satisfied. The evaluation team unanimously agreed that LV Yongchang was a real scientific research talent and met the requirements of the God-making plan. But on the other hand, putting LV Yongchang on the table will inevitably attract the covetousness of other countries. According to LV Yongchang's habit of staying in the laboratory all year round, nothing will happen in peacetime. After all, there are a large number of troops stationed around the laboratory, and Xia Jiuo prohibits guns and screens experimental personnel very strictly, so LV Yongchang is almost in no danger. But the chaos era is about to begin. Once the God-making plan is launched, LV Yongchang's safety issues will face unprecedented challenges. Han Kaiming took a deep breath and said softly, "Chairman, Professor Liu's safety issue." Chairman Lee chuckled. "It's okay. The current Xia country is not something that anyone can touch. As for the United States across the way," a cold light flashed in Counselor Lee's eyes, "I hope they can think of something. After enduring for so many years, Xia's basic policy should also change." As usual, Zhao Ziji turned on the TV after dinner and switched the channel to the news channel. At 1900 hours in the evening, a familiar melody sounded. Good evening, everyone. Faced with this familiar opening speech, Zhao Ziji subconsciously picked up the phone next to him and prepared to chat in a group to kill time. Just as he unlocked the screen of his phone, the host's tone changed. "The latest news from this station. The Moon Palace project has officially started, and the project leader is Professor LV Yongchang. At present, the first batch of automatic lunar mining equipment is about to be completed. It is expected that at 12 noon the day after tomorrow, Zuanv number 1 will take part of the automatic lunar mining equipment to the moon. The entire launch process will be broadcast live on the entire network, and everyone is welcome to watch." At the same time, every news and social app on Zhao Ziji's mobile phone popped up a notification almost at the same time. Xiago officially launched the Moon Palace project. Fuck. Zhao Ziji stared at the dozens of pop-up news on his phone in amazement, muttering to himself, "What happened?" Without time to think, he subconsciously clicked on the Penguin Group. Sure enough, everyone was discussing the news just now. Fuck. 10 messages popped up on my phone just now, and I was so scared that I almost threw my phone away. It turns out that you can never believe what the rabbit says. They made the automatic mining equipment without saying a word, and they said it was officially launching the Moon Palace plan. What is the launch? It's just a notice before the plan is successfully implemented. Chapter 105 Lu Yongchang. I refuse. So, didn't any of you notice a problem? The person in charge of this project turned out to be Professor L.V. Yongchang. A piece of news instantly attracted Zhao Ziji's attention. L.V. Yongchang? Who is L.V. Yongchang? Come on. Some experts will tell me. Messages flashed by one after another. Zhao Ziji was stunned for a moment, looking at his phone helplessly. It's been less than a year. Have these stupid netizens forgotten about it? As expected, netizens' memories are only 7 seconds. Zhao Ziji pondered for a moment, and gently pressed the screen with his fingers. Remember Pangadu? That was the one led by Professor L.V. Yongchang. Fuck. I remember it. I remember it too. Is it the old professor with white hair? WTF. Isn't he a sophomore from Sandaokao University? Wait, are we talking about the same thing? Zhao Ziji suddenly reached out and covered his forehead. This group of idiots. When someone dug up the news about this period, the entire penguin group fell into a dead silence. Hiss. A powerful scholar is so terrifying. Fuck, is he still a human? He studied controlled nuclear fusion in his sophomore year, then became the first director of the space agency, and now he is the person in charge of the Moon Palace project. Good guy. Even novels dare not write like this. Wait, I seem to have had a similar conversation. Like, the Penguin Group. Weibo was also in chaos at this time. Countless netizens were discussing the major events that L.V. Yongchang had done in the past year under the hot search list. Zhao Ziji looked at the information compiled by netizens with a serious face. Suddenly, his eyes moved slightly. He found the bright spot. No, he found the blind spot. After serving as the director of the space agency, L.V. Yongchang entered a long period of news vacuum. This period lasted for several months. Zhao Ziji quickly pressed the screen a few times and sent his findings to the Penguin Group. So, what did our Professor L.V. Yongchang do in these few months? Early the next morning. L.V. Yongchang had no idea how big a wave his name had caused on the internet. At this time, he was sitting quietly in his office with his eyes closed. His consciousness entered the technology tree system space again. Looking at the cursors that gradually lit up, L.V. Yongchang's eyes moved slightly. According to the order, what he should solve now should be the hibernation technology. Right, he could understand the order arranged by the system. After all, according to the current speed of aircraft, without hibernation technology, interstellar travel of hundreds or thousands of years, not to mention the problem of human reproduction and inheritance, even the materials would not be enough to consume. It's just, this hibernation technology involves his blind spot in knowledge. Looking at the extremely dim cursor in front of him, L.V. Yongchang sighed slightly. Since his rebirth, he always felt that he was either on the road of studying hard or in the process of studying hard. Thanks to the system, he is now basically about to become an all-round talent. Knock, knock, knock. A quick knock on the door sounded beside my ears. A few seconds later, the sound of the door opening sounded. Minister Hang, why are you here? Su Yutong's voice was full of surprise. Minister Hang, Professor Lu is still resting. L.V. Yongchang was slightly startled and quickly pulled his consciousness out of the system. Ahem. Lu Yongchang opened his eyes, stood up quickly and said, Yutong, let Minister Hang in. Minister Hang, looking at Hang Kaiming's slightly strange eyes moving back and forth between himself and Su Yutong, Lu Yongchang felt uncomfortable, as if there were ants crawling on his body. Hang Kaiming chuckled, turned his head, and said to Su Yutong, Su Yutong, right? Professor Lu and I have something important to discuss. Su Yutong naturally understood the meaning of this and immediately stood up and left the office, closing the door. Minister Hang, I have nothing to do with her. Seeing Su Yutong leave, L.V. Yongchang hurriedly said, she is Professor Guan Hualing's student, and she came to me to learn from my experience. Hang Kaiming's smile became more and more intense, and he said slowly, oh, but I didn't say you two had any relationship. L.V. Yongchang, seeing LV Yongchang's frustrated look. Han Kaiming couldn't help laughing. LV Yongchang looked at Han Kaiming helplessly. Minister Hong, you came here so early in the morning. Didn't you just want to say a few words to insult me? Okay, let's talk about business. Han Kaiming restrained the smile on his face and simply repeated the conversation between the chairman of the parliament and him yesterday. LV Yongchang looked at Han Kaiming as usual. That's it. Han Kaiming's expression became strange. Don't you have a little intense reaction? LV Yongchang rolled his eyes unhappily. Intense reaction? What kind of intense reaction can there be? Didn't he encounter this kind of situation often in his previous life? Minister Han, just tell me, what do you want me to do? Lu Yongchang said bluntly. It's all for Xia country. I will cooperate with you to the fullest. Han Kaiming smiled. You have a good understanding. It's not a big deal. Before Zuanv number 1 takes off tomorrow, you need to go to Xiaguo News to record a program. LV Yongchang, why? Don't you want to? Han Kaiming raised his eyebrows and asked softly. Faced with Han Kaiming's question, LV Yongchang frowned slightly. After a moment of silence, he said softly, Minister Hong, I think that at this critical moment, we should forget about recording programs or anything. Besides, the Moon Palace project plays a very important role in a series of subsequent projects. I can't take this risk. Han Kaiming thought for a while and said again, since you don't want to, I won't force you. What you said makes sense. We can't create gods just for the sake of creating gods. The focus should still be on scientific research. I will personally explain this to the chairman of the parliament. Just command with peace of mind. After speaking, Han Kaiming stood up, patted Lu Yongchang's shoulder gently, and said meaningfully, Yongchang, do what you want to do boldly. If anything happens, we will cover it for you. These are the original words of the chairman of the parliament. At the end, Han Kaiming added a sentence and opened the door of the office and walked out. Looking at Han Kaiming's back, Lu Yongchang took a deep breath. With a few gleams in his eyes with such a promise, he can also let go of some hands and feet. Professor Lu Su Yutang's voice sounded at the side. Minister Han left so soon, looking at Su Yutang carefully sticking his head out of the door. Lu Yongchang chuckled. Help me find some biological information. Remember, it has to be related to hibernation technology. Chapter 106. Hello everyone, I'm the host Bingbing. At 10 o'clock the next morning. In the newly built ground command center, a group of researchers sat in their seats with nervous expressions. In 2 hours, Zuanv number 1 will land on the moon with the first batch of automatic mining equipment. As the starting point of all subsequent plans of Xia State, it can be said that the Moon Palace project can only succeed, not fail. Standing on the command platform, LV Yongchang looked at the big screen in the command center with a serious look. Yongchang, Academician Kang is here. Fang Zhu's voice came from the side. LV Yongchang's eyes moved slightly, and he quickly turned to look in the direction of the voice. A gray-haired old man walked towards him quickly with a cane. Seeing this, LV Yongchang hurriedly stepped forward and took him to a seat beside him. Academician Kang, thank you for your help. After sitting on the chair, Kang Xingbang waved his hand cheerfully and said, no trouble, no trouble. The lunar automatic mining equipment is the project I'm responsible for, and this is what I should do. LV Yongchang nodded gently and said respectfully, Academician Kang, there are still 2 hours before the launch of Zuanv number 1. You can take a rest first. No. Kang Xingbang waved his hands repeatedly. I haven't taken a good look at our Xia country's Zuanv number 1. This time I have to take this opportunity to take a good look. While speaking, Kang Xingbang cast his eyes on the picture on the big screen. At this time, Zuanv number 1 was quietly parked beside the runway, and several ground crew members were carefully checking the various data of Zuanv number 1. Modu. Zhao Ziji turned on the computer early and logged into the Dao Shall Live broadcast platform. As expected, the homepage of the Dao Shall Live broadcast platform is the official live broadcast room of Xiaguo News. As he clicked the mouse gently, the page jumped instantly. Hello, everyone. I'm the host Bingbing. Today, I will bring you the full live broadcast of the Moon Palace project. In the live broadcast room. A bright female voice sounded. The next moment, a beautiful host with a sweet look and short hair jumped into the camera. In an instant, the number of bullet comments in the live broadcast room increased several times. Bing bing. My bing bing wife, why are you on TV again? Didn't I tell you to stay at home? What? Wife? Is that your wife? This is obviously my wife. Come on. Some yellow urine. Wake them up for me. Don't come with diabetes. I'm afraid they will taste the sweetness. Looking at the bullet comments that flashed by quickly, Zaozij's mouth twitched slightly twice. This generation of netizens really didn't disappoint him. After seeing those tiger and wolf words on the display screen next to him, Bing Bing in front of the camera pursed her lips slightly and revealed a slightly shy smile. This scene undoubtedly caused greater critical damage to the audience in front of the screen. Seeing the barrage chat getting more off topic, Bing Bing hurriedly cleared her throat and spoke again. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, and there is still an hour before Zuand number 1 officially takes off. Let's follow the photographer to the command center first. As soon as the voice fell, the live broadcast room quietly switched to the scene of the ground command center. This naturally caused a burst of ghost howling in the barrage. Bing Bing, my Bing Bing, give me my Bing Bing back. But soon, the young man standing on the command platform attracted everyone's attention. This should be Professor Lu Yongchang, right? So young, aren't you talking nonsense upstairs? You are still a junior now. The next moment, the voiceover sounded. The person in front of you is Professor Lu Yongchang, the person in charge of the Moon Palace project. Maybe some people are not very familiar with Professor Lu. Here, I will introduce you in detail. As Bing Bing's voice sounded, the live broadcast screen was divided in half, and Lu Yongchang's achievements over the past year were listed in detail. Room temperature superconducting technology. Controlled nuclear fusion technology. The first director of NASA. Fusion reactor miniaturization technology. All thrusters. Zuand number 1 space shuttle. As lines of highlighted fonts appeared, the live broadcast room fell into silence. Looking at the few bullet comments that drifted across the screen, Zaoziji swallowed slightly. He subconsciously opened the penguin group. Fuck, good guy, who said yesterday that Professor Lu had a few months of slack? Kill that prophet for me. I declare that from now on, Professor Lu is my idol. Similar to the reaction in the penguin group, the live broadcast room, Weibo, and almost every social media were flooded with this series of news released by the official. Looking at the screen in the live broadcast room, Zaoziji gradually realized a problem. More than 30 minutes passed, and although the camera kept changing angles, Professor Lu's position was always in the center of the screen. Not only that, even the host Bing Bing occasionally interspersed a sentence or two about Professor Lu's daily scientific research in the commentary. Zaoziji's eyes gradually became strange. If he didn't know that this was a live broadcast about the Moon Palace project, he would even think that this was Professor Lu Yongchang's personal show. Zaoziji frowned and thought for a long time. In the end, he opened the penguin group and typed on the keyboard to express his doubts. Good fellow, Leo Zao, you finally came out. If I remember correctly, you were the prophet yesterday, right? Kill Leo Zao. Wait. Don't rush to kill him. Take a look at what Leo Zao posted first. Fuck. I didn't feel anything at first, but now that Leo Zao said that, it seems to be true. Hiss. Xiago News personally praised someone. This scene is rare, but why aren't the higher-ups afraid that something will happen to Professor Lu? Just when everyone was discussing fiercely, a message popped up. The administrator has muted all members. The next moment, the group leader spoke. Fuck, you guys really dare to discuss anything? I thought you guys were just talking, but you actually wanted to send me to work on a sewing machine. Let's stop talking about this. No matter what the higher-ups think, this is not a problem we should discuss. You guys, do you understand? Zao Ziji looked at the bombardment of messages from the group owner on Penguin. His eyes twitched, and he silently deleted the edited Weibo copy. After more than 50 minutes of long waiting, Zuand number 1 finally entered the countdown stage for to key off Bing Bing's voice attracted Zaozij's attention. Looking at Zuand number 1 with a faint blue tail flame on the runway, Zaozij's heart beat violently. Even though this was the second time he watched the takeoff of Zuand number 1, his heart was still shocked by its extremely beautiful appearance. Chapter 107 Rabbit. I have completed a billion points. 3, 2, 1. Takeoff. Following Lu Yongchang's order, Zuand number 1 on the runway drew a graceful curve and jumped into the air. The next moment, the scene quietly changed. Host Bing Bing appeared in front of the camera again, still with that sweet smiling face. Dear viewers, Zuand number 1 has successfully taken off. It's time for us to say goodbye. As soon as he finished speaking, countless barrages flashed on the screen. That's it. So short and weak. Where is the full live broadcast that was promised? Also, after introducing Professor Lu for so long, you didn't even give an interview shot. As if seeing the barrage from the audience, Bing Bing chuckled and said, of course the live broadcast is not over yet. According to the latest data, Zuand 1 will arrive at the moon in 10 hours. As for Professor Lu's interview footage, as she said that, Bing Bing quickly glanced at the left side of the camera, as if she had received some instructions. I can tell you here that according to the original plan, we invited Professor Lu to do a program about the Moon Palace project. However, in order to ensure the successful implementation of the Moon Palace project, Professor Lu declined our invitation. Okay, I won't say any more. The next live broadcast will be handed over to the camera inside Zuand number 1. As Bing Bing's words fell, the screen in the live broadcast room quietly changed. Zaoziji stared blankly at the computer screen in front of him. A huge console. Various indicator lights flashed on the console. Of course, in some key places, the staff thoughtfully put on thick mosaics directly above the console. Are 3 portholes made of glass. The outside world can be clearly seen through the portholes after a short delay. The barrage in the live broadcast room exploded instantly. Holy shit, is this something we can see? Zin, didn't you see the mosaics in key places? Is there a possibility that Zuand 2 is already on the production line, and the internal pictures of Zuand 1 are no longer important? Zhalang headquarters. Before the live broadcast started, Zhalang specially added 10 sets of servers to ensure the smoothness of the bib. But now, quick, Xiao Wang, add all the spare servers to me. What? Are you using them all? You're not going to find anything else, are you? Fuck, where did all these people come from? The person in charge looked at the growing data on the background and swallowed slightly. He had received instructions from the top management 2 days ago. If it messes up, the person in charge shuddered slightly. Then his voice became a little louder again. Hurry up. Even if 2 whole potatoes are connected, you have to stabilize the server for me. The number 1 scholar at Sandaokao University takes you into the daily life of Professor Lu Yongchang. Professor Lu refused to be interviewed by Zhiguo News. The reason was titles like this flooded the entire Xia Kingdom internet. At this moment, Zhiguo's execution ability was fully demonstrated on the entire internet. I couldn't find a word to discredit Lu Yongchang. Even if there is, the moment it appears, it will be quickly deleted by the internet police and the administrators of major web pages. Many iron-headed boys even offer a 15-day sewing machine trial package for this purpose. As for Lu Yongchang's rejection of Zhiguo News' invitation, it was brought up and praised repeatedly. These are the real researchers. It's not like those internet celebrities who just want to be a hot topic and hope others don't know about it. 10 hours later. Moon orbit. Call the ground command center. This is Zuand number 1. Please answer when you receive it. We have arrived in lunar orbit, requesting landing. A few seconds later, Lu Yongchang's response came over the radio. Approved for landing. Receive. After Baixuan responded, he controlled Zuand number 1 to land at the predetermined location. During the period of developing lunar mining equipment, 3 pilots drove Zuand 1 to and from the moon more than 10 times. It can be said that these people now come to the moon as easily and skillfully as going home. As for the purpose of these more than 10 trips to the moon and back, naturally, it is necessary to bring various devices needed for the Lunar Palace project to the moon. After all, the carrying capacity of SYNOPSIS is not large enough to carry so much supplies at one time. Then at this moment, a variety of heavy equipment is set up on the silver white moon surface. Smelting furnace, crawler conveyor, or sorting equipment. It's like building a small ore smelting plant. Next to this small ore smelting plant, a black aircraft landed slowly. Countless moon dust instantly rose up around the fuselage. The 3 pilots, wearing spacesuits and carrying cameras, stepped off SYNOPSIS. When the scene on the moon's surface was transmitted to the Earth through the satellite, the entire Zaya kingdom, the entire world, everyone who paid attention to the live broadcast was stunned. What the hell? The promised moon palace plan will be officially implemented today. Do you dare to believe what Rabbit says? Rabbit, I just completed 100 million points. Fuck me. I believe you. Even if you say there is only one automatic mining device left, congratulations on getting the answer right, but there is no prize. After Yongchang set up the camera, he and 2 teammates came to the belly of SYNOPSIS. He reached out and pressed a few buttons under the operation of the hydraulic transmission device. The cargo door on the belly slowly opened. In the cargo hold, 9 silver white cubes with a side length of 2 meters lay quietly in it. Is this the automatic mining equipment? Hang Fan's voice sounded in the team channel. Why do I think it's a bit unreliable? Logically speaking, there should be at least a drill, right? Yongchang shrugged and said unhappily, who knows? Maybe there is, but it's just hidden. Huh? Really? Hang Fan quickly walked to the silver white cube and looked inside along the cracks on the surface. Okay, finish the task quickly. These 9 things are not easy to move. Yongchang walked past Hang Fan and walked towards the handling machinery on the side. Hang Fan raised his head, looked at Yongchang's back, and said blankly, aren't you curious? After all, Professor Liu also got involved in this thing. Who knows how much high technology it contains? Zaya. One Aya's voice sounded It made sense, but he was unable to refute it. Hang Fan was stunned, gave up his curiosity, and walked towards the position of his 2 teammates. Even if the gravity of the moon is only 1/6 of that of the Earth, it is not an easy task to move these big things with the help of the transport machinery. The 3 worked together and successfully transported the 9 silver white cubes to the designated location. Yongchang took a long breath and then turned on the radio switch. Ground Command Center, the mission has been completed. Chapter 108 Self-replication received. Now start the automatic lunar mining equipment. Liu Yongchang's calm voice came from the radio. The next moment, under the gaze of countless people, a scene with a science fiction flavor appeared. Several blue red indicator lights first lit up on the surface of the 9 silver white cubes. The next moment, as the indicator light continued to flash, the silver white cube slowly unfolded along the cracks on the surface. Due to technical limitations, which is slightly different from scenes in science fiction movies, the cube does not unfold very quickly. But this scene is surprising enough. The 9 cubes slowly unfolded and then spliced together, and a prototype of mining equipment slowly appeared in front of everyone. His captain, Yongchang, was also shocked by the sci-fi scene in front of him. Damn it, Professor Liu and the others have created something. Hang Fan on the side stared intently at the automatic assembly process of the mining equipment in front of him and murmured to himself, let's just say, is there a possibility that Professor Liu is actually an alien? The 3 astronauts were so surprised, let alone the ordinary people who saw this through the camera. In just a few minutes, countless viewers flooded into the live broadcast rooms of major platforms. Holy crap, if it weren't for the total loss of image quality, I would have thought it was a clip from a science fiction movie. What the hell? Are you serious? I just squinted for a while. Could it be that I traveled through time? You're awake. The operation was successful. Such a scene can be shown to us. So the question is, how much does Zaya hide in his hands? Rabbit. Not too much. Not too much. Just a few 100 million. Just As the discussion was getting heated, the live broadcast screen suddenly switched point. Host Bing Bing's sweet smile appeared in front of the camera again. Dear viewers, this live broadcast of the Moon Palace project ends here. See you next time. Before he finished speaking, the live broadcast screen went black. Is it really going to be downloaded at the speed of light? What's next? I want to read what's next. I'm sorry, this viewer. The following is paid content. Payment account. More than an hour later, seeing that the automatic mining equipment was operating normally, Lu Yongchang on the command platform breathed a sigh of relief. Is the regolith collection truck already in operation? Kang Xingbang's questioning voice came from the side point. Lu Yongchang nodded slightly. Unlike mining equipment, the surface debris collection truck started operating a week ago. The current situation is good. Through the two heating methods of electric heating and solar reflector, a part of helium-3 has been collected. The second purpose of Xuan-1 going up this time is to bring back these helium-3. Kang Xingbang supported his crutches with both hands and struggled to stand up from the chair with a touch of excitement in his eyes. From now on, the Moon Palace plan will really begin to be implemented. It's just a trace of worry flashed in Kang Xingbang's eyes. According to the current speed, the Moon Palace project may still be a little slow. Hearing Kang Xingbang's sigh, the smile on Lu Yongchang's face gradually disappeared. He sighed slightly, nodded and agreed. Yes, not only the transportation capacity of Xuan-1, but also the working efficiency of the mining equipment is a big problem. I have roughly estimated that at the current pace, it may take about 5 years for the Moon Palace project to be fully implemented. Kang Xingbang pondered for a moment and said softly, the transportation capacity of Xuan-1 is not a problem. If 1 is not enough, we can build 10. If it is not enough, we can build 100. In my opinion, the most important issue right now is the efficiency of mining equipment. After all, the program is dead, and it is on the distant moon. These factors have led to extremely low mining efficiency. If we let Zero control those mining equipment, do you think it's feasible? Kang Xingbang has seen a fully automatic factory controlled by Zero at the beginning. Due to manpower and productivity reasons, Zero could only control more than a dozen robotic arms and various machine tools in just 2 months. The number of Zero control robotic arms and machine tools has increased hundreds to thousands of times naturally. This was not achieved by relying on Zhiguo's original productivity point. After all, it was impossible for Zhiguo to stop other more important production tasks, to manufacture a large number of precision robotic arms and processing equipment for 0. As a true artificial intelligence, 0 has a real special skill point, self-replicating point. As long as there are sufficient raw materials and sufficient computing power, 0 can achieve exponential explosive growth through a few robotic arms and various production equipment. That is the legendary explosive soldier point. After witnessing the exponential growth of productivity, Kang Xingbang started thinking about this. If Zero's ability is used on the moon, perhaps the entire Moon Palace project will only take a few months to complete. Thinking of the scenes of countless robotic arms operating various production equipment to mine and smelt on the moon, a blazing flame was once again ignited in Kang Xingbang's old and withered heart. But the next moment, the flame was mostly extinguished by Lu Yongchang's basin of ice water. Mr. Kang, at present, this may be difficult to achieve. Kang Xingbang stared at LV Yongchang, who was looking bitter, and his dry hands unconsciously grasped the cane in his hand. What's the reason? He asked in a slightly hoarse voice. LV Yongchang shook his head bitterly. Mr. Kang, I have also thought about the method you mentioned. Let alone the computing power problem, the delay between the Earth and the moon alone is enough to make us drink a pot. Kang Xingbang suddenly reacted. That's right. Perhaps because he was too excited, he actually overlooked the simplest problem. Delaying communication between the Earth and the moon. LV Yongchang's voice sounded again. Mr. Kang, the current round-trip time of information from the Earth to the moon is between 2.34 and 2.71 seconds. Even artificial intelligence, facing such a delay, may find it difficult to accurately operate the mining equipment on the moon. What's more, at present, Zero's idle computing power is not much. After controlling this factory, it also needs to be responsible for various computing tasks in the entire laboratory. Kang Xinbang sighed deeply, his eyes full of disappointment. In this case, we can only build a few more Zuan number 1 and use manpower to fill this gap. LV. Yongchang's eyes moved slightly. There is no need to be so pessimistic. As far as I know, academician Ko Liankei's drawings of Zuan number 2 have passed the initial verification. Perhaps it won't take much time for you to see Zuan number 2. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 The Origin of. After academician Kang left, LV Yongchang returned to his office, with a thoughtful look on his face. As the creator of Zero, LV Yongchang naturally knew how powerful Zero was. It is no exaggeration to say that it is precisely because of the existence of Zero that the so-called Heavenly Court plan can be realized. As for computing power, it is not a particularly big problem. From 0 to 1 is always the most difficult step. Since the first generation of superconducting quantum computers has been successfully developed, it is expected that academician Mo Ziyang will also have good news about the second generation of quantum computers soon. Therefore, communication delay has become the biggest obstacle. LV Yongchang closed his eyes, and his consciousness came to the technology tree system space again. Quantum communication technology, the Starship manufacturing technology, has a matching status with it. In other words, these two technologies have basically reached the ceiling of the so-called first level civilization. Looking at the dim cursor on the upper layer of the first level technology tree, LV Yongchang sighed softly. He tried to focus on the extremely dim cursor, trying to get some simple hints. A strong sense of dizziness came from the depths of his mind. LV Yongchang groaned. The next moment, his consciousness was ejected directly from the fluorescent green space. Professor LV. There was a burst of hurried footsteps and calls from the side. Professor LV, are you okay? Perhaps because of the impact of dizziness, Su Yutang's voice seemed particularly distorted. LV Yongchang struggled to open his eyes. His vision was blurred. A warm feeling came from near the philtrum. A short scream came. You have a nosebleed. A burst of hurried footsteps gradually faded away, followed by a chaotic shout. He subconsciously wanted to reach out and wipe it, but his eyes went black and his consciousness gradually collapsed. Drip, drip, drip. Consciousness returned. The buzzer sound and the pungent smell of disinfectant around him all reminded him of his location. LV Yongchang slowly opened his eyes, and a bit of bitterness appeared in the depths of his eyes unexpectedly. The backlash effect of getting prompts at a higher level was so great. Not only did he not get any information, he was also sent to the hospital. Just when LV Yongchang was secretly annoyed, the door of the hospital ward quietly opened. Professor LV, are you awake? Su Yutang's voice came. Looking at Su Yutang standing at the door of the ward with a cup of water, LV Yongchang smiled bitterly and nodded at her, saying, thank you for your help. How long have I been unconscious? Before Su Yutang could speak, the voice of the chairman of the council came from outside the door. 3 days. The next moment, Councillor Li appeared at the door of the ward. Yutang, go out first. I'll talk to Yongchang. Hearing this, Su Yutang hurriedly put down the cup in her hand and left the ward. LV Yongchang was slightly startled and subconsciously wanted to get up. Hey, don't move. Seeing this, Councillor Li stepped forward quickly, stretched out his hand, and pushed him back to the bed. Councillor Li frowned slightly, looked at him carefully, and asked softly, what happened to you? I heard from Fang Zhu that you were sitting on the chair when your nose suddenly started bleeding. Your face was as white as a piece of paper, which scared the people in the laboratory. LV Yongchang smiled awkwardly. Chairman, did the doctor say anything? Councillor Li glanced at LV Yongchang meaningfully and said softly, in the past 3 days, almost all the top doctors in Xia country have come to check, but they didn't find any problems. LV Yongchang's eyes flickered slightly, and he said nonchalantly, maybe it's because I've been overusing my brain these 2 days. It's not a big deal. By the way, Mr. Counselor, can I be discharged from the hospital? In the laboratory, member. Lee frowned and interrupted Lu Yongchang's words directly. Isn't this a big deal? If you can't wake up, do you know what it means? Okay, you don't need to worry about the laboratory. Fang Zhu and the others will manage it well. You should have a good rest these days, member. Lee turned his head and shouted to the outside of the door. Dr. Wen, take him for a checkup. LV. Yongchang. More than 2 hours later, LV Yongchang lay on the bed with a look of despair on his face and was pushed back to the ward point in just over 2 hours. He almost went through a full range of examinations and was almost sent to the operating table for autopsy. Dr. Wen, what are the results of the examination? Seeing LV Yongchang and the doctor returned to the ward, Counselor Lee hurriedly stood up and asked solemnly, is there anything abnormal with Professor Lu's body? Drive. Wen faced Counselor Lee and said respectfully, member, no problems have been found so far, but, Counselor Lee frowned and spoke in a heavier tone. Dr. Wen, if you have any questions, just say it directly. Drive. Wen showed some hesitation on his face and whispered, member, although it has declined at present, Professor Lu's brain activity is still several times more active than normal people. Member. Lee was slightly stunned. This, shouldn't it be a good thing? Drive. Wen smiled bitterly and shook his head. Member, if it is within the normal range, it is indeed a good thing. You mean? Counselor Lee's expression changed slightly. Mr. Counselor, let me give you an analogy. If you compare the brain to the engine of a car, within the normal range, the stronger the engine performance, the better. But what if you install an aircraft engine on a tractor? Drive. Wen smiled bitterly and shook his head. During the examination, we noticed that Professor LV Yongchang's physical fitness is much higher than that of normal people, but that is also within the normal range. But his brain is different. It has completely surpassed the level of normal people. When Professor LV was first sent here, his brain activity was almost more than 10 times that of a normal person. Although it has declined at present, it is still 3 to 5 times that of a normal person. So, under normal circumstances, Professor LV may not be abnormal, but once the situation a few days ago occurs, he will. LV Yongchang, who was lying on the bed, moved slightly in his heart point. He understood a little point. The so-called prompt of the system did not appear out of thin air. It just stimulated his brain with the help of means he was not aware of. Point. When the brain is highly active, knowledge of various disciplines is quickly called up, and a conclusion is formed in the subconscious mind. Point. Then, this conclusion was presented to his conscious mind by the system. Point. In this way, his coma this time was also normal. Point. After all, the consequence of brainstorming without any theoretical basis, it was simply courting death. Point. It was good that this CPU did not burn out. Chapter 110 Ling, where did you get this information? As for the fact that the brain activity is much higher than that of normal people, this should be the result of the long-term transformation of the system. Point. After all, this system is quite balanced. Point. LV Yongchang thought with a smile. Point. At least, it did not transform its own brain alone. Point. Otherwise, it would really become the situation that Dr. Wen said. Point. The aircraft engine was installed on the tractor. What should we do now? The voice of the chairman of the parliament was a little anxious. According to what you said, Professor Lu will have problems as soon as he uses his brain. Dr. Wen shook his head hurriedly. No, you misunderstood. The current situation is not so exaggerated. According to the evaluation of the expert group, Professor Lu's body and his brain are currently in a relatively balanced state. As long as he does not overuse his brain, generally nothing will happen. The chairman of the parliament breathed a sigh of relief. Point. The next moment, he frowned and looked at LV Yongchang. Yongchang, did you hear what the doctor said? LV Yongchang nodded repeatedly. Point. He had learned enough of this lesson. Point. He never dared to climb the technology tree in big strides again. By the way, what on earth were you thinking about at that time that could make you like this? After the crisis was resolved, Counselor Lee instantly relaxed a lot and turned to ask LV Yongchang. It's nothing, just a simple quantum communication technology. LV Yongchang replied with a wry smile. Point. Counselor Lee, Dr. When, doctor, what do you think? Why don't you let him lie in the hospital for a while to rest? Hearing this, LV Yongchang's face changed drastically. Dr. Wen saw LV Yongchang's frightened look and smiled and shook his head. Chairman, please don't tease him, since there is no problem. Let him leave the hospital. I guess Professor Liu is not someone who can stay idle. Hearing this, LV Yongchang said, after returning to the office, LV Yongchang mobilized his consciousness again and returned to the technology tree system space point, but this time, when he looked at the technologies on the upper level of the technology tree, there was a little more, or in his eyes, let's take it slow. The technology tree must be built step by step, and the meal must be eaten bite by bite point. After he sighed slightly, he focused on the hibernation technology point, perhaps because he had just recovered from a serious illness. He felt a slight dizziness. LV Yongchang panicked. Point, don't be funny. If he had just come out of the hospital and was sent back, he would have been forced to rest for a while. The dizziness was not strong and slowly dissipated. After a few seconds, a prompt slowly appeared in front of him. Biological enzyme. Consciousness returned. LV Yongchang opened his eyes and his fingers quickly tapped the keyboard. Point, biological enzyme. He frowned and looked at the various research materials in the computer and shook his head gently. Point, no point. Although many organisms have the ability to hibernate, that kind of hibernation is obviously not what LV Yongchang wants. This ordinary way of hibernation is obviously not suitable for interstellar travel that can easily last for hundreds of years. Wait. LV Yongchang raised his eyebrows suddenly. He realized a problem. He had thought so much just now, but his thinking was always limited to the Earth. If the first stage of interstellar travel is to leave the Earth, then why can't he find signs of life outside the Earth? As for whether there are still organisms on other planets in the solar system, LV Yongchang believes that there is a high probability that they still exist. Point, at least from the Proxima civilization, it can be seen that this universe is not empty. On the contrary, it is much more crowded than imagined. In just 4.22 light years, there are 2 advanced civilizations. This is still in the Mountain Valley area of the Milky Way. Although there are too few samples and there are certain accidental factors, he believes that the Earth will definitely not be the most special planet in the vast universe. 0. Help me find the latest map of Mars. LV Yongchang's eyes flashed with excitement. Point, that's right. Mars, as the twin brother of the Earth. Although Mars is smaller and the environment is not so suitable for the survival of organisms, it is undoubtedly the most likely place to hatch life. What's more, the hypothesis that there was life on Mars has been controversial in the scientific community. At least, a lot of evidence shows that in ancient times, there was a high probability of liquid water on the surface of Mars, which provides the greatest basis for the emergence of life. Point, worm-like tubular structure of ALH 84001 Martian meteorite under electron microscope. However, at present, the surface of Mars is eroded by solar radiation. Point, when solar radiation reacts with perchlorate, it will produce extremely strong toxicity to microorganisms. Therefore, most people believe that if there is life on Mars, it must be located below the surface so that it can survive from solar radiation and various toxic substances. Professor, the map of Mars you want? Zeros. Voice interrupted Liu Yongchang's thoughts, looking at the extremely high definition picture on the computer screen. Liu Yongchang was stunned. 0. Where did you get such a high definition map of Mars? Professor, this is the latest image taken by NASA's Mars orbiter. 0. Said incredible words in a very mechanical voice. 0. Did you just hack into NASA? LV Yongchang didn't know what to say for a moment. Not only that, Professor, if you want clearer video data, you can now manipulate NASA's satellite to change its orbit. LV Yongchang, ahem. Not that. This is fucking. If NASA finds out that the satellite has changed its orbit for no reason, then things will get out of hand. 0. Help me simulate where there are most likely to be organisms on Mars. LV Yongchang's eyes flashed with a strange light. Point, it has to be said that artificial intelligence plays a huge role in scientific research. At least, if this kind of comprehensive analysis work is done purely by manpower, it will take at least a month. Point, after a short wait, Zero's voice sounded again. Professor, according to the data I found in the NASA database, the most likely place for life on Mars is Utopia Plane. The next moment, the map of Mars on the computer screen instantly zoomed in, and a red circle circled the scope of Utopia Plane. Utopia Planes. Isn't this the landing point of the Pathfinder program in the United States? LV. Yongchang frowned slightly, realizing something was wrong. That's right. Ling Guiyang said with certainty. According to the latest data from NASA's Pathfinder program, 3 astronauts have discovered that there is abundant water resources underground in the Utopia plains in the form of ice. However, NASA's Pathfinder program has not yet provided clear data indicating that there are signs of life there. Chapter 111, Seizing Territory? Hearing Zero's answer, LV Yongchang couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Point as the largest plane on Mars. The diameter of Utopia Plane reaches an astonishing 3,200 kilometers. The distance between the farthest ends of Zai's territory is only 5,621 kilometers. Searching for traces of underground life in such a large area is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Zero, can you narrow the scope a little bit? LV. Yongchang asked softly. I remember that the United States has launched many Mars probes before. Didn't they do a more in-depth investigation of Utopia Plane? Professor, this will take some time. Zero's voice sounded. LV Yongchang nodded gently. Let's start the search. Time is not a problem, Professor. The results you want are out. Half an hour later, LV Yongchang was awakened by Zero's electronic synthesized voice. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at the computer screen in front of him. At this time, the Mars satellite map was enlarged again. Looking at the silvery white dots on the satellite map, LV Yongchang was stunned. A strange idea slowly emerged in his mind. Zero, isn't this the Mars module from the United States? His question was quickly confirmed by Zero. That's right, Professor. According to the information I searched, the area around the Mars module, within a radius of 2,000 meters, is the most likely place on Mars to show signs of life. LV. Yongchang frowned slightly and whispered, why? Zero quickly called up some data on LV Yongchang's computer. Professor, this area is a river valley area. According to the confirmation of the 3 astronauts of the Pathfinder project, there is a large amount of underground ice in this area, 1 to 10 meters underground. Although the entire Utopia Plane has a relatively rich underground ice reserve, the content in this area is about 20% higher than the surrounding level. LV. Yongchang looked thoughtfully at the lines of data marked on the satellite map. Is water resources the only basis? LV Yongchang shook his head slowly. This is not enough to support your judgment. In addition, this area has several large meteorite craters. Ling continued to add, compared with the plains, the solar radiation inside the meteorite craters is weaker, so the toxicity of the perchlorate on its surface is several times weaker than other places. LV. Yongchang's expression moved slightly. Compared with water resources, this is indeed a reliable basis. It seems it is necessary to grab territory with the United States. LV Yongchang's eyes flashed, and he stood up from his chair and said, Ling, help me make an appointment with the counselor. I need to apply to the counselor for this matter. That night. Beijing. Yongchang, do you mean we have to go to Mars and do some tricks near the US Mars cabin? Counselor. Li looked at LV Yongchang in front of him with a strange look. LV Yongchang shook his head seriously. Chairman, how can this be called a small move? In order to find possible signs of life, we may need to conduct large-scale drilling and sampling experiments within a radius of 2,000 meters from the Mars cabin. Member Li. Hiss. Let me think about it. Counselor Li took a breath, his eyes full of entanglement. Although no one's name was written on this Mars, this practice might be mistaken for a provocation. Chairman, this matter is very important. LV. Yongchang said solemnly, hibernation technology is a prerequisite for interstellar navigation. If we cannot master hibernation technology, at least 99% of the people in Zaya country will not survive. Member Li's expression was slightly shaken. After a short silence, the entanglement in his eyes gradually eased a little. Forget it. The conflict between us and the United States will happen sooner or later, since You insist so much, just do it. However, as far as I know, it shouldn't be easy for Zuand number 1 to go to Mars, right, LV? Yongchang smiled and shook his head. Senator, I didn't say to use Zuand number 1 to go to Mars. The senator's breathing suddenly became a little faster. You mean, with the help of Zero, Academician KO will probably be able to complete the design plan of Zuand number 2 in a short time. LV Yongchang said with a smile. In addition, with the helium-3 resources refined by the Moon Palace project, the second-generation nuclear fusion reactor project can be realized immediately. Senator Lee's eyes widened suddenly. This so fast. LV Yongchang's smile became more and more intense. Senator, you still underestimate the role of Zero. With the help of Zero, the scientific research efficiency of the laboratory has increased by at least 10 times. Next, Zyagor will usher in a real era of technological explosion. Mars inside. Mars module number 1. Andrew frowned and stared at the computer screen in front of him. Strange. He reached out and touched his stubbled chin, muttering to himself, why did the satellite suddenly, Bruno's slightly nervous voice came from the side. Andrew, what happened to the satellite? The next moment, Bruno put down the work in his hands, quickly came to Andrew, and looked at the screen in front of Andrew with a nervous face. Andrew frowned, and shook his head slowly. I don't know what's going on. I always feel that the satellite response speed is much slower today. Maybe it's my illusion. Hearing this, Bruno suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. He raised his hand and slapped Andrew's thick back beside him. Captain, I'm not saying anything bad about you, but we are on Mars now. Isn't it normal for the satellite signal to have some problems? Andrew nodded thoughtfully, but there was a hint of doubt between his eyebrows. Maybe it's the reason you said, but I always feel. Stop. Bruno smiled bitterly and stretched out his hand to interrupt Andrew's words. Captain, have you forgotten? 2 days ago you said that you felt that there was something wrong with our air circulation equipment. Good family man, you almost scared me and Joey to death with this sentence. Don't talk about us. Even the NASA staff on duty were scared to death by your words. Andrew was slightly stunned. A trace of embarrassment flashed in his eyes, and he touched the tip of his nose with a wry smile. This illusion, just an illusion. Bruno glanced at Andrew beside him unhappily. Captain, NASA told Joey and me that if you have this situation a few more times, you can basically be diagnosed with a mental illness. Andrew's mouth twitched slightly. It's not that bad, isn't it? Just a little oolong incident. Chapter 112 Race Against Time. The two people's argument attracted Joey in the number 2 Mars cabin. After hearing Bruno's last words, Joey was slightly stunned. After a few seconds, she reacted. Captain, Bruno is right. NASA recommends that we give you some antidepressants. Andrew. He looked at Joey with a face full of resentment. There is no need to be so exaggerated. Joey nodded seriously. Captain, this is not an exaggeration. Even in the Earth space station, there are many astronauts suffering from mental illness, not to mention that we are now on Mars. In order to prevent unexpected situations, NASA even equipped us with tranquilizers when necessary. Okay. Andrew shuddered slightly and said unhappily, I just said the wrong thing. Okay. As he spoke, Andrew turned around and said again, looking at the computer screen in front of him, it's almost time. We should send the drilling results of the past few days to NASA. Hey. Bruno beside him sighed slightly and rubbed his sore shoulders. Why do you think we drill holes on Mars every day? Joey continued. Didn't NASA say it was to find traces of life on Mars? TSK. Bruno rolled his eyes unhappily. Do you really believe NASA's nonsense? Look at how many holes we have drilled in the past few days. I see. There is nothing else under the Utopia plane except the ice layer. Just as Bruno was complaining, a piece of data was transmitted to the Earth via satellite. After returning from the chairman of the parliament, Lu Yongchang sat behind his desk and quietly looked through various research data and papers on quantum communication. Time waits for no one. Even if it is not yet time to conquer quantum communication technology, he needs to continue to learn relevant knowledge. Professor, I have intercepted the latest data of the US Pathfinder project. Zeros. Unique electronic synthesized voice broke the silence of the office. HMM. LV Yongchang raised his eyebrows slightly and said softly, "What did you find?" "Drilling data in recent days." As Zero's voice fell, the computer screen in front of LV Yongchang suddenly lit up, and a series of detailed data appeared in front of him. Wow. The United States is well prepared. LV Yongchang sat up straight and looked at the computer screen in front of him with excitement. With so much drilling and testing data, it seems that the US Pathfinder project this time, in addition to the so-called colonization experiment, also has a part of the purpose to find traces of extraterrestrial life. After a short silence, Zero's voice sounded again. "Sorry, Professor, I didn't find anything about this plan on the internet." LV Yongchang waved his hand nonchalantly. It's normal not to find it. Most of these truly confidential documents are saved in paper documents. Zero. What are the results of the data analysis? After a moment of silence, LV Yongchang asked again. "Professor, according to the drilling data sent back by the Pathfinder program, combined with the location of the US Mars module, Zero said as he quickly enlarged the satellite map on the computer screen. Finally, the picture was fixed on a meteorite crater. Inside this meteorite crater, 5 to 10 meters underground, the possibility of life has reached 75.2%. Looking at the meteorite crater only a few hundred meters away from the Mars module, LV Yongchang's breathing suddenly became rapid. "To close," he muttered to himself. With a distance of only a few hundred meters, according to the current drilling speed of the United States, it is estimated that it will not take long for them to complete the exploration of the area near the Mars module. By then, NASA will definitely turn its attention to the meteorite crater only a few hundred meters away. Even if the task of drilling inside the meteorite crater is more difficult, NASA may put its drilling order at the end, but this will not delay much time. A rough estimate is that in about a month and a half, it is estimated that the 3 astronauts will go to the meteorite crater with drilling equipment. "No, we have to speed up the development of Zuan-2." LV Yongchang stood up from his chair. "Zero, how is the development of Zuan-2 going?" Perhaps sensing the urgency in LV Yongchang's tone, Zero's reply was much faster. "Professor, the laboratory in charge of Academician Ko Lianke has proposed 3 different plans and is currently being demonstrated. So slow." LV Yongchang frowned slightly and said quickly, "From now on, all resources will be given priority to the research plan of Zuan-2." As he spoke, LV Yongchang pushed open the door of his office and walked towards the laboratory in charge of Ko Lianke. 2 o'clock in the evening. The first laboratory of Xiago, the aerospace division, was brightly lit. LV Yongchang hurried to the door of the laboratory and pushed open the door of the laboratory. Quickly passing through the corridor filled with cold light, LV Yongchang came to Ko Lianke's office. "Leo, Ko." LV Yongchang knocked on the office door and shouted, "Leo Ko, are you there?" A few seconds later, Ko Liang opened the door with a pair of dark circles under his eyes. "Professor Lu." The moment he saw LV Yongchang, Ko Liang's eyes flashed with surprise. "Why are you here?" Looking at the pen in Ko Liang's hand, LV Yongchang breathed a sigh of relief. "Fortunately, you didn't sleep, otherwise I would have to call you to wake you up today." Ko Liang's expression changed slightly. He had never seen LV Yongchang so anxious. "Professor LV, what happened?" While speaking, he opened the door and turned sideways to welcome LV Yongchang into the office. LV Yongchang did not enter the office, but stood at the door, looking at Ko Lianke in front of him with a serious expression. To make a long story short, "Old Ko, I heard from Ling that you have proposed 3 blueprints for Zuan-2. Ko Lianke was slightly startled, then nodded quickly. "Yes, but we haven't decided which plan to adopt yet, and these plans have not been verified by Ling." As he said that, he suddenly realized something. What? Something went wrong. LV Yongchang took a deep breath, nodded vigorously, and said in a deep voice, "We need to land Zuan-2 on Mars within a month. Now, hold a meeting immediately, and the plan must be finalized tonight." Ko Liang K's breath suddenly choked. He subconsciously turned his head and glanced at the wall clock. 12:15. Okay. Ko Liang K nodded seriously. Some researchers may have a break. Give me 15 minutes. Chapter 113 3 Design Schemes for Xuan Second. 12:30. In the conference room. LV Yongchang sat on the main seat with a serious look and briefly introduced the situation on Mars in a deep voice. Everyone, the situation is urgent. The plan for Xuan Second must be decided tonight. As he said that, LV Yongchang winked at Ko Liang K, who was standing beside him. Ko Liang K quickly presented 3 design plans to everyone. An hour later, LV Yongchang put down the documents in his hand and breathed a long sigh of relief. Old. Ko. Just eliminate the third plan directly. Ko. Liang K's face changed slightly. Why? Huh? From Ko Liang K's expression, LV Yongchang noticed something unusual. Old Ko, this third plan, it can't be designed by you, right? LV Yongchang gently shook the documents in his hand, looking at Ko Liang K beside him with a surprised look. Hearing LV Yongchang's question, Ko Liang K's face flushed a little, and he nodded gently. Yes, this is indeed the plan I designed. Speaking of this, Ko Liang K took a deep breath and calmed down his complicated feelings. Professor LV, can you tell me the reason? To be honest, he was a little unwilling. As an academician, he was very careful about the design of Xuan Vi. Taking off and landing in the atmosphere, cruising in the atmosphere, and spaceflight. It is no exaggeration to say that with this design, even with the same power system, the performance of Xuan Second is more than 50% higher than that of Xuan Vi. LV Yongchang smiled bitterly and shook his head. Academician. Ko, have you forgotten the task we assigned to Xuan Second? Ko. Liang K was stunned. LV Yongchang sighed softly and whispered, the Xuan Second series of aerospace planes are mainly responsible for the transportation of materials within the solar system. That is to say, the main battlefield of Xuan Second is not on Earth. The Moon, Mars, or the distant Kuiper Belt are all its future destinations. In this case, do you think the original shape of the aircraft is still suitable? Not talking about the moon, just talking about Mars. The atmospheric density of Mars is about 1% of that of the Earth. How much lift do you think such a wing can provide for it? Too much waste of space. Ko. Liang K suddenly froze in place. LV Yongchang shook his head and sighed while taking another plan. Of the 3 plans, I prefer this one. Ko. Liang K looked at the plan in front of LV Yongchang. It was a plan proposed by a professor under him. It can be clearly seen from the drawings that, in order to pursue a larger capacity, it completely abandoned the traditional aircraft shape. After removing the wings, widening the nose, and thickening the fuselage, the entire Xuan Second roughly took on the shape of a rectangular block. Ko Liang K's eyes twitched violently. This was the first plan he rejected. He raised his doubts softly. Professor Liu, with this shape, can it really take off on Earth? This shape that goes against common sense completely overturned Ko Liang K's slightly old-fashioned thinking. Liu Yongchang carefully looked through the drawings in his hand, with a bit of satisfaction in his eyes. Of course, as long as its power is strong enough, with the second generation nuclear fusion and the second generation Hall thruster, I believe that power will definitely not be a big problem. With this design, it can shoulder the heavy responsibility of transporting materials within the solar system. Ko. Liang K fell into silence. As an academician, he never thought that his design drawings would be inferior to a professor under him. Liu Yongchang noticed the disappointment on Ko Liang K's face at the first time. He stood up and patted his shoulder with a smile. Leo. Ko, your thinking is limited. Since we think we can get out of the Earth, sometimes we must learn to break common sense. Ko. Liang K took a deep breath and looked at another design drawing on the table. Professor Liu, what about the other design drawing? What do you think? After hearing this question, Liu Yongchang also fell into silence. After a long time, he pulled the corner of his mouth, smiled bitterly and shook his head. To be honest, I'm not very clear who came up with this drawing. Hearing Liu Yongchang's question, Ko Liang-K cast his inquiring eyes on the people in front of him. A group of professors and academicians moved their eyes away, indicating that it had nothing to do with them. A few seconds later, a young voice sounded in the corner, "Professor Lu, I made this plan." Everyone's eyes were cast in the direction of the voice. I saw a researcher in his 30s standing in the corner, carefully raising his right hand. A strange color flashed in Lu Yongchang's eyes. "What's your name, Tao Yuda?" When he heard this name, LV Yongchang froze in his tracks. "Tao Yuda? Did you write the paper on sonoluminescence and controlled nuclear fusion?" Tao Yuda was stunned for a moment, then nodded with a wry smile and said, "Professor LV, have you read that paper? I wrote it when I was a graduate student." LV Yongchang's eyes became even more suspicious. He could detect the relationship between the two during his graduate studies. His scientific intuition is incredible. No wonder such an outrageous plan can be proposed. Yes, it is outrageous. LV Yongchang reached out and picked up another document on the table and looked at it carefully. According to Tao Yuda's design, Zuanv is a standard sphere. It must be said that such a design can not only reduce the resistance in the atmosphere, but also maximize the volume. But LV Yongchang's mouth twitched slightly. At present, our technical level should not be able to make such a flying vehicle, right? Tao Yuda scratched his head with embarrassment. "Professor Lu, this is just an inspiration of mine. You don't have to care." LV Yongchang looked at Tao Yuda meaningfully. Inspiration. Another inspiration. It must be said that after entering space, spherical starships may be the ultimate development direction in the future. Tao Yuda's inspiration has been correct at least twice. 0. Help me verify these two plans. Stop the other unnecessary calculations and run them with all your strength. LV Yongchang added softly, "I want to get the results in the shortest possible time." As soon as the words fell, an electronic synthesized voice sounded in the conference room. "Yes, Professor." After getting Zero's answer, LV Yongchang gently pulled Ko Liang-K beside him and whispered, "Old Ko, come out with me." Ko Liang-K looked at LV Yongchang in front of him with a puzzled look. He didn't quite understand why LV Yongchang suddenly pulled him out of the conference room. LV Yongchang looked past Ko Liang-K and looked at the closed door of the conference room, as if he could penetrate it. "Old Ko, focus on training Tao Yuda next." Ko Liang-K's breath was slightly choked. "You mean?" LV Yongchang said in a light tone, "This kid is a material for scientific research." Chapter 114. Codename Yinghuo. Ko Liang-K's pupils shrank slightly, and he was obviously shocked by Lu Yongchang's words. "Are you sure?" He looked at Lu Yongchang in front of him with surprise and whispered, "This kid is usually silent. If he hadn't taken the initiative to stand up today, I would have even forgotten that there was such a person in the laboratory." LV Yongchang nodded seriously. "Old Ko, believe in my vision." After returning to the meeting room, Ko Liang-K looked at Tao Yuda with a deep look. "Ko, academician Ko." Tao Yuda looked at Ko Liang-K with trembling eyes for a few seconds, and quickly lowered his eyes and asked in a low voice, "Is there any problem?" Ko Liang-K shook his head slowly, with a smile on his lips. "Nothing." Tao Yuda, right. "Are you interested in being my deputy?" Hearing this, Tao Yuda's breathing suddenly became rapid. "Yes, I am." Tao Yuda's eyes were full of excitement, and he nodded vigorously. Before Ko Liang-K could continue to say anything, an electronic synthesized voice sounded in the conference room. "Professor, the simulation results are out. Plan Number 1 was successful." LV Yongchang's expression was normal, without any change. He had expected this result a long time ago. But what is the reason for the failure of the spherical structure? He asked in a deep voice. 0's simulated tone revealed a bit of strange meaning. "Professor, our current material strength is not enough to support a spacecraft of this structure. Not only that, the current manufacturing process is not enough to manufacture such a spacecraft." "Sure enough." LV Yongchang's eyes showed a bit of realization. "Since the plan has been decided, 0, from now on, go all out to manufacture the Zuanv number 2 prototype. Half A month later a press conference was quietly held in the Great Hall of Zaya State. The press conference was held by the National Space Administration. This was also the first time that the National Space Administration had held a press conference in the true sense since its establishment. Such a gimmick naturally attracted the attention of many media. As a reporter of Xiaguo news agency, Zhuo Chen arrived at the press conference early after receiving the invitation. Looking at the half-empty chairs at the scene, Zhuo Chen couldn't help but stand there, then raised his wrist to check the time. The time is right. What's going on? Why are there so few people? Brother Chen, just as Zhuo Chen stood there wondering if he had walked into the wrong place, a familiar shout came. His eyes moved slightly, and he looked in the direction of the voice. Ding Yakin? Did Xiaguo Daily send you to attend this press conference? Ding Yakin walked quickly to Zhuo Chen, smiled and nodded, and said softly, Brother Chen, go to your seat first. After that, Ding Yakin pulled Zhuo Chen to a corner looking at his nameplate on the seat, and Ding Yakin's nameplate on the seat next to him. Zhuo Chen was stunned, and smiled and glanced at Ding Yakin next to him. We are destined to be together. After sitting on the chair, Zhuo Chen looked at his watch again. There are still 20 minutes before the press conference starts. Looking at the half-empty seats around him, Zhuo Chen's eyes showed some uneasiness. I say, why are there so few people at this press conference? Did I remember the time wrong? Ding Yakin's expression changed slightly. Obviously, she, who arrived at the press conference earlier than Zhuo Chen, also discovered this problem. She turned her head and glanced around, and said softly, Brother Chen, didn't you notice that all the people here are domestic media? Zhuo Chen's eyes fixed, and quickly looked around. Sure enough, all the people present were reporters from various domestic media. Could it be that foreign media were not invited to this press conference? Zhuo Chen's brows frowned instantly. It shouldn't be. A press conference of the level of NASA would not invite foreign media, right? Just when Zhuo Chen was lost in thought, Ding Yakin's soft reminder came from the side. Brother Chen, the press conference is about to begin. Zhuo Chen suddenly came back to his senses and looked up at the stage. A young man in a well-dressed suit slowly walked up to the podium, and his eyes, scanning the crowd, revealed a bit of majesty that was inconsistent with his age. Professor Liu, Zhuo Chen murmured to himself. It turned out that Professor Liu came in person. It seems that there will be big news at this press conference. Everyone, welcome to the press conference of NASA, perhaps. To save time, Liu Yongchang's words were very concise. Here, I mainly announce the following two things. First, at present, the prototype of Zhuan has been completed, and the first flight test will be carried out at 12 noon tomorrow. Second, the destination of the first flight of Zhuan this time is Mars. From tomorrow, Xiaguo will officially start the Mars exploration plan, codename Yinghuo. After the voice fell, the press conference was silent. Zhuo Chen stared blankly at the young director on the podium, his Adam's apple trembling slightly, and his face was full of horror. Zhuan Mars exploration plan, no matter which one, even if it is taken out alone, it is an explosive big news. Now these two pieces of big news combined together shocked everyone present in an instant. Does anyone have any questions? Looking at the blank expressions of the audience, LV Yongchang frowned slightly. Is it necessary to be so surprised? The United States has already gone to Mars, so what's wrong with them keeping up? As LV Yongchang's voice fell again, the silent press conference site suddenly erupted into a very strong discussion. Professor LV, I want to ask, is this a counterattack by Xiaguo against the US Pathfinder program? Of course not. Everything is just for scientific exploration. LV Yongchang said righteously. Mars is the Mars of mankind, and Xiaguo naturally has the obligation to find a second habitable home for mankind. Professor LV, can I ask about the performance of Zhuan and what are the specific contents of the entire plan? LV Yongchang glanced at the reporter who asked the question and shook his head slowly. Sorry, no comment, but some of the performance of Zhuan can be revealed. LV Yongchang smiled and turned on the projector. A rectangular brick with a black body appeared in front of everyone. This is Zhuan. It is equipped with second generation Hall thrusters and helium-3 reactors. The Payload reaches 80 kilometers. The longest driving range reaches 6.68 astronomical units, which is 1 billion kilometers. After sufficient acceleration in outer space, the maximum speed of second can reach 10 times the third cosmic speed, which is a high speed of 167 km/s. Chapter 115. Albert, I have to find a chance to abdicate. Immediately after the press conference ended, the people of Xia State were once again in shock. What the hell? Is this the second Mars exploration plan? For scientific exploration? Understand, we all understand. Am I the only one who noticed the data of Zhuang 2? 80 density payload, top speed 10 times the speed of the third universe. Good guy, why don't you make a science fiction movie? So, with Zhuang number 2 looking like this, can it really fly into the sky? Everyone, please be quiet. Let me say something. The first flight will be broadcast live at noon tomorrow. Bing Bing is mine. Although no foreign media were invited to this press conference for such a big event, foreign media are naturally not vegetarians. They immediately learned about the specific content of the press conference through various channels. The White House of the United States. Albert stared blankly at the newspaper in front of him, his face gradually turning red. Holy shit, William Blair. Tell me, why does the CIA not know anything about such important information? You, the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, are worse than a newspaper vendor on the roadside. William Blair grimaced and sighed deeply. Your Excellency, I don't think this is a CIA problem. Albert's eyes twitched sharply, and the anger in his heart grew higher and higher. What do you mean? It's not the CIA's problem. Is it my problem? William Blair's expression changed slightly, and he shook his head repeatedly. After hesitating for a moment, he took out a document from the briefcase beside him and handed it to Albert. Albert frowned and took the document and looked at it carefully. In recent months, no spy has successfully infiltrated the Xia Kingdom's #1 laboratory. A trace of surprise flashed in Albert's eyes. How is this possible? William Blair smiled bitterly and said, Your Excellency, we don't know the reason, not to mention the #1 laboratory in Xia Kingdom. Currently, our spies in Xia Kingdom are decreasing rapidly. Even some core spies who grew up in the Xia Kingdom were discovered by the Xia Kingdom. It's like Xia Guo has the specific list. As he said this, a trace of fear flashed in William Blair's eyes. After losing a large number of spies, the current CIA is like a blind man trying to figure out the situation in Xia Kingdom. Shit, how did Xia Guo do this? Albert's face darkened. Has the CIA's archives been invaded? William Blair shook his head repeatedly. This is impossible. Technical staff have been checking every day during this period, but we have not found any traces of intrusion so far. Albert's face became increasingly ugly. Let's put this aside. What do you think of Xia Guo's Mars exploration plan? And that damn Zhuang number 2, Molten, on the side, saw Albert looking towards him and sighed deeply. Your Excellency, if all the information officially announced by Xia Guo is true, I suggest saying that. Molten shrugged. We might as well just admit defeat. This is not the same level of technology at all. I even suspect that Xia Guo got help from aliens. Albert's eyes slowly swept across the people in front of him. He slowly closed his eyes, then waved his hand gently and said weakly, Everyone, please go out. I need to be alone. After everyone left, Albert opened his eyes slightly, looked at the splendid office in front of him quietly, and then sighed deeply. The United States must not fall into his hands. At least, during his term of office, the United States cannot fail. However, judging from the current situation, the rise of Xia Kingdom seems to be an unstoppable momentum. Thinking of the scene where he was nailed to the pillar of shame in history, Albert shuddered violently. Suddenly, an idea came to Albert's mind. How about find an opportunity to abdicate, leave this mess to the next president. At 11 o'clock sharp the next day. The live broadcast of Xia Guo news started on time. Because the last live broadcast was good, the host this time is still Bing Bing. Only different from the last live broadcast. In this live broadcast, almost everyone's attention was focused on The black cuboid brick. I bet a pack of spicy strips won't be able to fly by then. Took it. How do I pay for the preparations upstairs? I heard that after the news came out yesterday, Twitter in the United States was as quiet as a library. Is it true? Amid everyone's barrage of chatter, time passed bit by bit. The hour hand slowly points to the number 12. Zuanv number 2. Still the same cockpit, still the same driver. The only difference is that there are far fewer buttons on the console. This is thanks to Zero's great help. Zero has made a lot of optimizations to the program without affecting the performance. The control difficulty of Zuanv 2 has dropped by a whole level. Captain, do you think we can say hello to our American friends when we go to Mars this time? Hang Fan's voice was full of smiles. How will they react when they see this thing of ours? Bay Yixin rolled his eyes in annoyance and poured cold water on Hang Fan beside him. Forget it, Professor. Lu has repeatedly told us not to mess around. This is also what the chairman of the Senate meant. After all, the United States is not dead yet. Hang Fan curled his lips, and a hint of disappointment flashed in his eyes, but soon his eyes turned slightly, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. What if we just circle around their heads twice? Bay Yixin was slightly stunned. This, Captain, think about it. If we drive this thing around people's heads twice, how cool would it be? Hang Fan looked weird and kept whispering devil's whisper from his mouth. After a moment of silence, Bay Yixin turned on the radio switch, calling the ground command center. Professor Lu, are you there? Soon, Lu Yongchang's response was heard by everyone. Bay Yixin hesitated for a while and said what Hang Fan had just thought. Professor, can we go to the top of the US Mars cabin and take a few turns? We promise that there will be no trouble. Of course, this is Hang Fan's suggestion. At the end, Bay Yixin hurriedly added. There was a silence on the radio. A trace of cold sweat appeared on Bay Yixin's forehead, and he turned his head and glared at Hang Fan on his left. Just as he was about to say something, Lu Yongchang's faint voice came from the radio. What are you talking about? Isn't that your normal driving route? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Academician and Highest Science and Technology Award. Bay Yixin and the other three were suddenly startled. The next moment, they understood what Lu Yongchang meant. Bay Yixin suppressed his laughter and nodded vigorously. Professor Lu, you are right. Okay, no more gossiping. Lu Yongchang from the command center straightened his expression. There are still 5 minutes until takeoff. Be ready. Yes, hello, everyone. There are still 5 minutes left before the takeoff time of Zuanv 2. Bing Bing's slightly sweet voice sounded in the live broadcast room. We just got some information about Zuanv 2 from NASA. Zuanv 2. The fuselage length is 60 meters and the payload is 80 meters. The longest flight distance is 6.68 astronomical units, and the maximum flight speed is 167 km/s. Speaking of this, Bing Bing added again, although the maximum speed reaches 167 km/s, this is the result of full acceleration. Taking into account the acceleration and deceleration time, it will take Zuanv 2 about 15 days to successfully reach the orbit of Mars. In addition, with the help of the second generation Hall thruster, Zuanv 2 takes off and lands vertically. As Bing Bing's words fell, 2 faint blue flames spurted out from the bottom of Zuanv number 2 in the live broadcast screen. Driven by 2 Hall thrusters, Zuanv 2 slowly lifted off. Fuck, honey, come out and see God. Good guy. Vertical takeoff and landing. This technology. ZGUO didn't steal a UFO, right? Amid everyone's exclamations, 5 blue nozzles gradually appeared at the tail of Zuanv 2. The next moment, Zuanv number 2 dragged a long tail flame and flew straight towards the blue sky. Why do I feel that Zuanv number 2 is not very fast? I feel it too. This speed doesn't seem to be much different from an ordinary passenger plane. Would NASA report false data through the screen on the side. The host Bing Bing immediately noticed the various doubts in the barrage point. She hurriedly explained. Due to the shape of the fuselage, Zhuan-2 does not fly very fast in the atmosphere. The top speed is only about Mach 0.7, which is not much different from an ordinary passenger plane. Zhuan. No number 2. The faces of the 3 astronauts were full of boredom. Captain, I still like Zhuan number 1, Hang. Fan leaned back on the chair and said with dull eyes, this thing is too slow. Mach 0.7, that's slower than the plane my grandma flew. PFFD. Cough cough cough. Zai choked on her own saliva and glared at Han Fan angrily. That's right. Seeing Zai's angry eyes, Han Fan sneered, scratched his head and said, at this speed, it will take us a long time to get out of the earth. Right. Faced with Han Fan's complaints, Baixuan twisted his body that was tightly restrained by the seatbelt, and a wry smile flashed across his face. Not to mention Han Fan, even he thinks this thing is slow, but as the captain, he still has to do a good job of appeasement. Calm down, calm down. When the altitude is high enough and the air becomes thinner, we can speed up. Han Fan stared blankly at the clouds in front of him and sighed deeply. Ground Command Center. Looking at the series of data sent back by Zhuan-2, Lu Yongchang slowly breathed a sigh of relief, and the tense look on his face relaxed a lot. Yongchang, I have your letter. Just as Lu Yongchang was about to turn around and leave the podium, Fang Zhu's voice came from the side. He turned around and looked at the 2 letters in Fang Zhu's hand with a hint of doubt in his eyes. My letter. As he reached out to take the envelope, he frowned and muttered to himself, what age is this? There are still people sending letters. By the way, have you checked these 2 letters? Are they okay? Fang Zhu looked a little weird and said, don't worry, if there is something wrong with these 2 letters, our Zaya kingdom will probably be doomed. Lu Yongchang was stunned and quickly looked at the signature on the envelope. Zaya Academy of Sciences Zaya Guo Science and Technology Awards Office. Lu Yongchang's eyes moved slightly and he quickly turned to look at the calendar beside him. 2031.9.5. He realized something instantly. This is the academician selection year. Hearing Lu Yongchang's question, Fang Zhu smiled and nodded slightly. Congratulations. In a few days, we should change our name to Academician Lu. The corners of Lu Yongchang's mouth raised slightly. Although he knew that this title was just a dispensable title for him, as the highest academic title in science and technology in Zaya State, he was still somewhat obsessed with it. How come the results are out so quickly this year? Lu Yongchang reached out to open the letter from the Academy of Sciences and said, didn't the results usually come out around November? In his impression, Zaya's academicians were elected every 2 years, and each election was conducted from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Only after layers of screening and evaluation can one stand out from hundreds of candidates and become an academician. Fang Zhu rolled his eyes angrily. That's for normal people. Don't you look at how much you have done this year. If there were no procedures, I guess the old guys in the academy would have awarded you the title of academician at the beginning of this year. This is not nonsense. He heard some rumors as early as the beginning of the year. The Academy of Sciences held a special meeting for the selection of LV Yongchang as an academician. At the meeting, the review team had a heated discussion on when to award LV Yongchang the title of academician. According to the review team, the sooner the title of academician is given, the better. After all, judging from the current achievements, if LV Yongchang does not become an academician, there will be only a few people left in the Academy of Sciences who are qualified to be called academicians. However, in order not to break the rules, this time was delayed to September, just more than 2 months ahead of schedule. Dear Professor LV Yongchang, congratulations. Looking at the words in the letter, LV Yongchang's eyes showed a little smile. After a year of rebirth, he became an academician of Zaya again. It's a pity that no one has contacted him yet, otherwise he might have become the so-called chief scientist. Thinking of this, Lu Yongchang's eyes showed some interest. Why not find an opportunity to talk to the chairman of the parliament about the human union? After all, the current strength of Zaya Guo is enough to suppress those countries that like to make small moves. Don't you want to see another letter? Fang Zhu's voice came, interrupting Lu Yongchang's thoughts. Huh? What is this? Lu Yongchang was stunned and opened another letter. Xiaogo's National Highest Science and Technology Award, Chapter 117 Award Ceremony. Dear Professor L.V. Yongchang, in view of your many breakthroughs in cutting-edge science and technology and your outstanding contributions to the Xia Kingdom, you have been nominated as a candidate for the Xia Kingdom's National Highest Science and Technology Award. The results will be announced at the National Science and Technology Award Conference next week. Please be sure to attend. Looking at the lines of big words on the letter paper in his hand, L.V. Yongchang took a deep breath. Is the chairman of the parliament serious? L.V. Yongchang's eyes were slightly shaken. He had never received this award in his previous life. The reason is naturally very simple. In his previous life, when he was eligible for this award, the Xia Kingdom had already become part of the human union, so naturally there was no such thing as the Xia Kingdom's National Highest Science and Technology Award. Of course I'm serious, Fang. Zhu's voice interrupted L.V. Yongchang's thoughts. Do you think the chairman of the parliament would joke about this kind of thing? This is the highest level award among the 5 Xia Kingdom National Science and Technology Awards. Tut tut tut, Fang. Zhu's voice was full of envy. No scientific researcher can resist the temptation of this award. L.V. Yongchang stretched out his finger and gently brushed the large gold-plated characters on the letter paper, and his heart trembled slightly. The thin letter paper seemed to carry an inexplicable weight at this moment, pressing deeply on his heart. Since the founding of Xia State, not many people have won this level of award. In a sense, this is actually similar to the so-called Lifetime Achievement Award. Therefore, this award is generally awarded to older scientific researchers. The fact that the chairman of the parliament was able to make an exception and award the award to him, a young man of only 21 years old, undoubtedly gave him great trust and encouragement. Fang Zhu on the side looked at the letter paper in L.V. Yongchang's hand eagerly and swallowed slightly. Yongchang, you are also sitting at the top of Xia State's academic world. L.V. Yongchang chuckled, folded the letter paper in his hand, and put it in his pocket. What are you talking about? It's just a nomination. I don't know if I won the award. Fang Zhu curled his lips and didn't reply. In his opinion, unless the judges were kicked in the head by a donkey, this award would definitely belong to L.V. Yongchang. As for the so-called candidate list and award ceremony, it's just a formality. 1 week later, Sandaokao University. The office of the dean of the School of Nuclear Physics. Knock, knock knock. Hearing the rapid knock on the door, Jiang Yongxing subconsciously looked up at the clock on the desk. 10:18 in the morning. He frowned slightly. Who is it? Jiang Yongxing put down the pen in his hand and asked loudly outside the door. Me, Shan Zixun. Hearing the loud voice outside the door, Jiang Yongxing was stunned for a moment, then stood up and walked quickly to the door and opened it. Old Shan, why are you here when you're not staying at your school of materials? Looking at Shan Zixun's excited face outside the door, Jiang Yongxing frowned even deeper. What? Have you made any new breakthroughs? Shan Zixun's expression froze, and his eyes suddenly became a little weird. You don't know, Jiang. Yongxing frowned and shook his head. Oh, let me in first. I'll tell you slowly. Shan Zixun waved his hand carelessly, spread his legs, and walked towards Jiang Yongxing's office. By the way, do you have a TV in your office, Jiang? Yongxing nodded gently, turned sideways to open the door of the office, and welcomed Shan Zixun in. Old Shan, what's the matter? Looking at Shan Zixun sitting on the sofa calmly, Jiang Yongxing's eyes became more and more puzzled. Shan Zixun didn't say anything, but just reached out to turn on the TV next to him, and tuned it to the Xiaoguo news channel. Looking at the golden and red hole on the TV screen, Jiang Yongxing couldn't help but stand there in a daze. He frowned and looked at the date, with a hint of realization in his eyes, but then, this hint of realization was covered by a heavier doubt. I remember correctly, this should be the National Science and Technology Awards conference, right? Why? You came here today just to show me this, Jiang. Yongxing returned to his seat in a bad mood. I don't remember anyone in your school of materials winning any award, Shan. Zixen's eyes became more and more strange. He turned his head to look at Jiang Yangxing and asked softly, "Old Jiang, have you really not heard the news?" Jiang Yangxing's eyes were more confused and doubtful. "What news, LV?" "Yongchang has been nominated for the national highest science and technology award." Jiang Yangxing's pupils shrank slightly, and he stood up from his chair suddenly, with both hands on the desk in front of him. "What are you telling the truth, Cheyenne?" Zixen didn't say anything nonsense, but just pointed at the TV. "If you don't believe it, you can watch it yourself and find out." Right as soon as the voice fell, the national anthem of the Xia Kingdom came from the TV. The conference began. Jiang Yangxing's eyes moved, staring at the TV in front of him. Since ancient times, energy has always been the biggest obstacle to human progress. From the steam age to the electric age, from coal-fired power generation to wind and hydropower generation, we are thinking about energy issues all the time. Hearing this series of award speeches, Jiang Yangxing's eyes flashed with a trace of trance. "It's settled." Cheyenne Zixen's voice came from the side. "This highest science and technology award belongs to this kid LV Yongchang." The next moment, a voice came from the TV. "Now, please welcome the winner of the national highest science and technology award, Professor LV Yongchang." As the music and applause sounded, the TV screen cut to LV Yongchang. Looking at the slightly immature face in the screen, Jiang Yangxing and Cheyenne Zixen fell into silence. After a long time, Jiang Yangxing sighed. "For a long time, there are talented people in every generation, and each of them has been leading the trend for hundreds of years." Standing on the podium, looking at the various eyes of the people below the stage, LV Yongchang couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Even with his experience, when he heard his name, his heart couldn't help but twitch violently. After all, as a researcher in Xia country, the symbolic significance of this award is extremely huge. Just when he was a little dazed, the figure of the head of the parliament appeared on the side of the podium. Councillor Li walked up to the stage slowly and handed the medal and certificate in his hand to LV Yongchang solemnly. "Keep working hard, Counselor." Li smiled. "I'm waiting for the scene you described to me." As he spoke, Counselor Li reached out and gently patted LV Yongchang on the shoulder. LV Yongchang was slightly stunned and then realized that the counselor was talking about the heavenly court plan. He nodded vigorously with a hint of determination in his eyes. "Counselor, don't worry, Xia Kingdom will never perish." Click. The flash came on, and this scene was permanently recorded by the camera next to it. Chapter 118. Pathfinder calls Houston and discovers a UFO. Mars orbit. A black rectangular brick quietly passed through the synchronous orbit of Mars, calling the ground command center. Zuan II has arrived at the synchronous orbit of Mars. Please give instructions. Bay. Yixen's voice was transformed into an electromagnetic wave and transmitted to the Earth 82 million kilometers away. "Okay, the next step is to wait for the reply." Bei Yixen shrugged and said helplessly, "We now have a full 9 minutes of rest time." Before Bei Yixen finished speaking, Hang Fan on the side had already unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up from the chair. "This spacesuit is really well designed." Hang Fan walked in the cabin wearing special electromagnetic boots under the action of magnetic force. Hang Fan's body was firmly adsorbed on the floor of the cabin. Although there is no gravity in outer space, the carefully calculated magnetic force can perfectly simulate the feeling of walking on the Earth. Xia Wan-ie, who was standing by, touched the silver white spacesuit that was several times lighter than the original one. And the corners of her mouth rose slightly. "That's right, I heard from the ground staff that this spacesuit is made of the latest material developed by Professor Liu, and the cost is almost 3 times the original one." Hang Fan was secretly shocked. 3 times the cost. Just as he was about to say something, a strong electric current sound suddenly came from the radio. The ground command center received it and started the mission. Liu Yongchang's slightly distorted voice reached everyone's ears. Bei Yixen's expression was slightly serious, and he turned around and sat back in the chair. After fastening his seatbelt, he grabbed the fully enclosed helmet on the side and put it on his head. "Everyone, get ready. We are going to land." After The two companions fastened their seatbelts and put on their helmets. Bayexio and turned a few buttons on the console and pulled the joystick point. The flying posture of Zuan second was slightly adjusted and it plunged into the red Mars. Andrew, help me see. How many places have we not yet carried out the drilling mission? Bruno's listless voice echoed in cabin number 1. Andrew, who was sitting on the chair, stood up with difficulty, tapped the keyboard in front of him a few times, and glanced at the computer screen casually. Andrew's spirit suddenly lifted. Everyone, good news. We only have one place left to carry out the drilling mission. As soon as the voice fell, two teammates got up from the chair and jumped to his side. Bruno's eyes were full of hope, and he asked anxiously, where is it? Is it far away? Andrew tapped the keyboard again. The picture on the computer screen turned into a satellite map. The moment he saw the map, Andrew fell silent. He pondered for a moment and said with a tangled face, the distance is not far, but we may need to climb a mountain. Bruno looked confused. WTF? Climb a mountain? Joey on the side was also confused. Andrew, are you sure? Facing the doubts of his teammates, Andrew sighed deeply and then zoomed in on the satellite map. The full picture of the crater appeared in front of the three people. The crater is about 1,000 meters away from us, not very far. It's just that the height of the crater is about 1,000 meters. The depth of the bottom of the crater is about 1,500 meters. I have to say, we are lucky. At least, this is already a relatively small crater on Mars. As Andrew reported a series of detailed data, Bruno's mouth twitched slightly, and the light of hope in his eyes gradually dissipated. Andrew smiled bitterly and looked at the two dejected teammates. Just as he was about to comfort them, he was interrupted by a sudden piercing alarm. Listening to the alarm that had never sounded before, Andrew's face changed slightly, and he quickly looked in the direction of the sound. This is after seeing the machine that sounded the alarm, Andrew's face changed drastically, and he muttered to himself, WTF, Andrew's tone made the two dead teammates realize the problem. Bruno quickly stood up from his chair and walked towards Andrew. What happened? Faced with Bruno's question, Andrew did not answer, but just pointed at the screen in front of him. On the radar map, a monster was rushing straight towards them. Holy shit. Bruno's pupils shrank violently, and his eyes were full of horror. After a brief moment of daze, he cursed, damn it. What the hell is this? Andrew had already sat back in his chair, looking at the computer screen nervously, and typing on the keyboard quickly with both hands. More than 10 seconds later, he swallowed lightly. Damn. This thing is about 80 meters long. The flying speed has reached Mach 2. Joey's trembling voice came from the side. This can't be an alien. Looking at the UFO getting closer and closer to the Mars cabin, everyone's eyes were filled with fear. Andrew gritted his teeth, reached out and grabbed the radio device beside him, and shouted at the top of his lungs, Pathfinder, calling Houston. Pathfinder calling Houston. We found a UFO. Repeat. We found a UFO. It's coming for us. Seeing the UFO displayed on the radar stop above the Mars cabin, the fear in Andrew's voice seemed to become real, echoing in the small cabin. Number 1.1 minute later, is it gone? Joey asked with a trembling voice, closing his eyes tightly. Andrew plucked up his courage, slightly opened his eyes, and glanced at the radar screen. He was stunned. How is it possible? How is it gone? A trace of excitement flashed in Joey's eyes, and he quickly opened his eyes and looked out the window. No, it didn't go. It's hovering above the Mars cabin. Andrew looked at the scene in front of him with rapid breathing, his face full of disbelief. What does it want to do? Andrew, I think we made a mistake. Joey turned his head with a complicated expression on his face by the porthole and pointed to the sky. This is not an alien. It's a spaceship from Zaya country. Andrew and Bruno were slightly stunned. After they realized what was happening, the two of them stood up from their chairs, walked to the porthole and 2 steps, and looked up. They saw a dark black rectangular spaceship circling back and forth above the Mars cabin. On the side of the spaceship, a bright red flag deeply stung the pupils of the 3 American astronauts. Chapter 119. This is just a notification, not a discussion. Dip, unknown. Radio communication request detected. Just as the three of them looked up at Zuan number 2, which was hovering in the sky, an electronic beep woke them up. Andrew turned his head and glanced at the computer screen. A side point is a commonly used radio frequency band in Zaya Kingdom. After looking at each other with his two teammates, Andrew took a deep breath and pressed the connect button. Hello, hello. Friends from the United States, Fluent and standard English came from the radio. Andrew was silent for a while, then reached out and grabbed the microphone. Hello, this is the American Pathfinder. The next moment, a clear response came. This is Zuan number 2 of the Zaya Kingdom. We are about to go to the ZHZ-72 crater to conduct scientific research operations. We would like to remind everyone. Andrew's pupils shrank slightly. Crater ZHZ-72. Isn't this the next destination in the mission? Before he had time to think, Andrew responded hastily. I'm sorry, that's sus. This is just a notification, not a discussion. An extremely plain sentence came over the radio. If it hinders our scientific research mission, we will implement some necessary eviction methods. I hope you will think about it carefully. As soon as he finished speaking, the radio communication was cut off. Looking at the rustling radio station in front of him, Andrew's face instantly darkened. They're gone. Joe, I looked out the window and whispered, Captain, what should we do? Andrew quickly walked to the porthole, looked through the glass at the faint blue tail flame at the tail of Zuan 2, and took a deep breath. What else can be done? Get ready to report the situation. Also, the ZHZ-72 crater drilling plan is temporarily cancelled. Brothers, what do you think of what I just said? Are you domineering? Because of the excitement, the sides of Baixuan's cheeks were a little rosy. Fuck, this feels so good. Hang. Fan on the side curled his lips in annoyance. TCH. I promised one person only, but you ended up telling me everything. Seeing the resentful looks in Han Fan and Zawanai's eyes, Baixuan twitched the corners of his mouth slightly and coughed lightly. Ahem. Next time, definitely next time. America. Houston. Ground Command Center, TSK. Call. Houston, TSK. UFO. Repeat. We found a UFO. The silence of the Houston Ground Command Center was broken by a sudden sound. Hearing Andrew's words on the radio, Professor Chris' expression changed drastically. He grabbed the microphone on the side and responded loudly. Pathfinder. Report the details. Repeat. Report the details immediately. After putting down the microphone, Professor Chris looked uncertain. He turned around and shouted to the researcher on the side. Quick. Report the situation to Director Moulton. And, Your Excellency the President, Mars. Module. Report the details immediately. Hearing the belated inquiry on the radio, Andrew had a bitter smile in his eyes. He picked up the microphone on the table again and reported in detail what had just happened to the ground command center. Then came another long wait. Houston. Got it. Temporarily abandon the crater drilling plan, suspend all outbound inspection missions, and wait for notification. America. The White House. Albert sat behind his desk with a calm expression. You mean Zaya's Zuan 2 has arrived on Mars and stolen our scientific research goals? Moulton nodded vigorously and said angrily, Your Excellency, the Zaya state is too arrogant. They even threaten to deport our astronauts. Damn, how dare they do this? Facing Moulton's angry complaints, Albert looked increasingly calm. He waved his hand slowly. Forget it. Just bear with it. Albert's reaction clearly shocked Moulton. Moulton looked at Albert in disbelief. Your Excellency, President? What did you just say? Ninja. Are you sure that's the scientific research goal of our country? Albert lowered his eyes slightly and sighed softly. Moulton, let me ask you, Zuan number 2 of Zaya Kingdom should have set off 15 days ago, right? It only took 15 days to fly from the Earth to our Mars module. How long do you think it took us? Moulton's breath suddenly suffocated. But this is not enough. Albert scolded in a low voice. We have failed. We have completely lost this competition. Tell those astronauts to prepare to come back. Seeing that Moulton wanted to continue talking. Albert waved his hand with a tired face. Okay Moulton, I'm tired. We have been dealing with each other for such a long time, so I would like to give you a kind reminder. It's time for us to consider our options. The moment he heard these words, Moulton's expression was slightly shocked. After a long silence, Moulton's eyes turned red, and he nodded slightly, before turning and leaving the president's office. Seeing Moulton leave, Albert sighed deeply again, turned his head, and said to the secretary beside him, "Tell the media that I will hold a press conference tonight." That night. At the White House of the United States, the press conference site. Here, I strongly condemn the extremely domineering behavior of ZARGUO. Mars is the Mars of mankind, not the Mars of a certain country. I hope ZARGUO can correct its attitude and contribute to the common development of mankind. Okay, that's all I want to say. Does anyone want to ask questions? As soon as Albert finished speaking, countless hands were raised. Excuse me, President Albert, is it true that ZARGUO provoked our astronauts on Mars? Albert looked normal and nodded gently. It's true. In fact, I have heard the conversation between the two. The words of the ZARGUO astronauts are very fierce and have no respect for our astronauts. Excuse me, facing such behavior of ZARGUO, does the United States have any means of counterattack? Albert's face was a little ugly. The United States is a peace-loving country. In the face of the unreasonable behavior of ZAR country, we cannot fight violence with violence. We need to. Mr. President, do you mean that in the face of ZAR country's provocation, the United States has given in? A reporter interrupted Albert directly. Albert's face flushed, and he angrily slapped the podium in front of him. Damn it, listen to me. Listen, the United States will never give in. As for how to counter the provocation of ZAR country this time, we are still discussing it. Okay, this press conference ends here. Chapter 120 Severe Punishment. Not long after the US press conference ended, the relevant news has been posted on the hot search list of Weibo. Shocked, the US strongly condemned ZARGUO. The reason is, as for the comment area below the news, it was occupied by netizens who were keen to watch the fun in just a few minutes. Ha 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 ha. Can it be like this? Polar reversal. What is this called? It's a matter of time. I didn't expect that the United States would have such a set of rhetoric. I laughed to death. On the same day, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of ZARGUO held a regular press conference. Under the gaze of a group of domestic and foreign reporters, Yongchang slowly walked up to the podium step by step. Then, he looked at the reporters in the audience with a serious look and whispered into the microphone, "This press conference is mainly to clarify the remarks made by the United States yesterday. We have noticed that the United States has a deep misunderstanding of the Zhuanv second astronauts of ZAR. Here, I will give a simple explanation. Zhuanv second went to Mars, mainly to perform more delicate scientific research tasks. During the execution of scientific research tasks, once disturbed by the outside world, it is very likely to lead to its failure. Therefore, our astronauts said those words for scientific research tasks, and there is absolutely no provocation. In addition, we found that some clips were missing from the recording released by the United States. Our astronauts made those threatening remarks only after the American astronauts refused to cooperate. However, considering the negligence of the astronauts, after discussion, NASA decided to impose more severe penalties on the 3 astronauts. A total fine of 2,000 yuan. Okay, that's all I have to say. After speaking, Yongchang turned around and left the podium without even giving the reporters time to ask questions. This routine press conference poured a pot of hot oil on the already somewhat heated atmosphere. Fuck, is ZARGUO so tough this time? Let me translate the content of this press conference. I did nothing wrong. The United States was wrong. The above, you missed a point. ZARGUO is carrying out a precision mission, which means that the United States is carrying out a fine of 2,000, or a total. It deserves to be a heavy fine. Good guy. $2,000. I suggest water drop fundraising. No more words. Yongchang's 10-year-old fan came uninvited. Mars after showing off above the US Mars cabin. Baekseon directly controlled Zuan-2 to the destination point ZHZ-72 crater. As the height of Zuan-2 continued to decrease, the scene on the surface of Utopia Plains was clearly reflected in the eyes of the 3 astronauts on the surface of Mars, which was red with a few yellows. There were densely distributed rocks of all sizes. Utopia Plains on Mars, it's so desolate looking. At the surface with no vegetation or signs of life except for stones and dust. Zawanai's eyes flashed with emotion, and she whispered, "After seeing the moon and Mars, I really realized the beauty of the Earth. Alas, what a pity." Han Fan sighed from the side. According to Professor Lu's prediction, the Earth only has 14 years left. The atmosphere in the cabin suddenly became heavy. Aware of the atmosphere in the cabin, Baekseon chuckled. "I say, you two, there are still 14 years. Why are you sighing here, Professor?" Lu said that the Heavenly Court plan will be realized in 14 years. "When have you ever lied?" Han Fan perked up a little. "Yes. Then we will go to Proxima Centauri and grab their territory." Baekseon and Zawanai were slightly stunned, and then a longing smile appeared on their faces. The sun on Mars slowly sets as the blue flame at the bottom of Zuan-2 decreased. Zuan-2 gradually landed inside the crater. Because the sunlight was blocked, the bottom of the crater had already entered the night ahead of time. Baekseon pressed several lighting buttons on the console in front of him. The next moment, more than 10 strong white lights illuminated the dark bottom of the crater like daylight. As Zuan-2 landed, a burst of red Mars dust rose. Under the illumination of more than 10 white light beams, Zuan-2 seemed to have entered a red world. With a bit of beauty in the weirdness, he frowned and looked at the surface structure outside, then looked at the dashboard in front of him, with a hint of spirit in his eyes. Sure enough, Professor Lu is right. The surface inside the crater is covered with a layer of dust and fine particles. After the sun sets, these materials cool down much faster than rocks. At present, the surface temperature has dropped to -50, which is 80 lower than the outside. While speaking, Baekseon reached out to unbuckle the seatbelt. "Everyone, we should get ready to work." After putting on the helmet and carrying the oxygen tank, he reached out and pressed the button to open the cargo hold. The abdomen of Zuan-2 slowly opened on both sides, revealing a series of equipment inside. Deep geological drilling machine, microbial detector and various precision testing instruments. In order to improve efficiency, after the drilling mission is completed, the 3 astronauts also need to test and inspect the samples drilled out. Thanks to the fact that Mars has only 38% of Earth's gravity, the 3 of them easily moved the deep geological drill out of the cabin. After assembling the drill, Baekseon pondered for a moment, turned his head, and said to Zawanai, "Wanai, we are responsible for drilling and sampling, and you are responsible for testing the soil samples." Seeing Zawanai nod, Baekseon and Han Fan looked at each other, pointed the drill bit of the drill at the Martian soil in front of them, and started the machine directly. A buzzing sound sounded, and countless red Martian dust rose. Because the surface layer was mostly dust and fine particles, the drill bit sank into the surface with almost no resistance. 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. Seeing the drill bit enter 5 meters underground without any resistance, Baekseon's eyes showed a little panic. This situation is not right. According to Professor Lu, there should be traces of underground ice at 5 to 10 meters underground. Baekseon's eyes twitched slightly, and he whispered in the team's radio channel, "Something is wrong. Stop the drilling machine." Han Fan, who was standing by, did not ask any more questions, and directly reached out and pressed the stop button. As the motor reversed, the drilling equipment 5 meters underground slowly emerged from the surface. Baekseon squatted down and reached out to grab a handful of soil samples brought out by the drilling equipment. Even through the spacesuit, Baekseon could detect that there was no moisture in the soil. He rubbed the red soil vigorously. The soil that was originally lumpy turned into star-like debris and slipped through his fingers. Chapter 121, Air Circulation Equipment Failure. Looking at the soil that had turned into crimson debris, Baekseon's face turned ugly, broken. He whispered, "How long of drilling steel pipe have we prepared?" Han Fan thought for a moment. To be on the safe side, I probably carried him about 30 meters away. What's Wrong, Bay. Yongchang breathed a sigh of relief and pointed at the drill hole a few centimeters in front of him. Look, the drill drilled 5 meters, and all that came out was dust and fine particles, Professor. Lu estimated at that time that the depth of this part was only 2 to 3 meters. After hearing this, Hang Fan also realized the problem. Bay Yongchang continued with a slightly solemn expression. Currently, we don't know how deep this part is. Fortunately, we brought a 30-meter drilling steel pipe. Otherwise, I guess we wouldn't even be able to see the shadow of the underground ice. While talking, Bay Yongchang installed the drilling steel pipe back on the drilling machine. Go on. I hope we can find so-called Martian life within the length of the steel pipe. At the same time, inside the American Mars module 1000 meters away, bip, blop, blop, just as everyone was getting ready to go to bed and end this tiring and depressing day, a piercing alarm sounded from the speakers of the Mars cabin. Andrew, who had just laid down on the single bed, suddenly opened his eyes and jumped up from the ground like a carp. What's going on? Listening to the alarming siren, a flash of anger flashed in Andrew's eyes. Damn it, aren't the Zaya people coming again? Without time to think too much, he put on his clothes casually and ran directly in the direction of cabin number 1. Tens of seconds later, Andrew pushed open the closed door of cabin number 1. He immediately looked towards the radar. Nothing unusual. He was stunned for a moment, then turned around and glanced around. The next moment, his pupils shrank suddenly. Captain, what's going on? Bruno and Joey's inquiries came from behind. Are the Zaya people here again? No. Hearing Andrew's response, Bruno and Joey relaxed slightly, and the expressions on their faces relaxed a lot. There is something wrong with our central control computer. Andrew hurriedly walked inside and said a hot sentence. Hiss, WTF. Bruno and Joey gasped suddenly, and their eyes widened suddenly. Bruno? Andrew looked at Bruno sitting in front of the computer solemnly and asked in a low voice, what's going on? As he spoke, Andrew's eyes were filled with panic and uneasiness. This is the central control computer. Once something goes wrong, the 3 of them will die in this small Mars cabin. Bruno typed on the keyboard a few times and looked at the several lines of error codes that appeared on the screen. His face instantly turned ugly. He slowly turned his head and glanced at Andrew beside him with deep meaning. Captain, you were right. There's something wrong with our air circulation equipment. To be precise, there is a problem with the carbon dioxide absorber in the air circulation equipment. According to the current progress, in about 3 days, the Mars cabin will be filled with a large amount of carbon dioxide and other toxic gases. Even if there is enough oxygen, excess carbon dioxide can kill us. Andrew's expression changed drastically. In panic, an idea flashed in his mind. Bruno, I remember that Pathfinder 3 carried some accessories. Is there a carbon dioxide absorber among them? Before Bruno could reply, Joey on the side said, yes, there must be. To prevent accidents, NASA specially equipped 2 complete sets of air circulation equipment. Upon hearing this, Bruno breathed a sigh of relief. The original solemn expression disappeared, replaced by an indescribable sense of relaxation. He lightly shrugged and said in a joking tone, everyone, this is a false alarm. I thought we had to ask Zuan 2 next door for help. Now it seems that our NASA is quite reliable. He was joking as he opened the door of Mars module number 1. Come on, you two, let's go to the warehouse to find spare air circulation equipment. Mars module number 3. Is a warehouse that supports the lives of 3 astronauts for 3 months. The largest number of items in number 3 cabin are various compressed foods, of course, in addition to a variety of compressed biscuits. NASA also thoughtfully prepared some instant cans to improve the meals for these astronauts. Although the taste of these instant cans is not very good, they are still much better than compressed biscuits. Andrew and Bruno moved the boxes full of food and fresh water aside in front of them with great pain. Found it. Andrew looked at the box with the air circulation equipment logo engraved in front of him, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Hearing Andrew's voice, Bruno also breathed a sigh of relief. I finally found it. Bruno reached out and wiped the beads of sweat on his forehead. We almost rummaged through this warehouse. As he spoke, Bruno reached out and tugged on his collar, and said with a strange expression, "By the way, do you feel a little stuffy? Have carbon dioxide levels started to rise?" Joe raised his watch to look at the data, then rolled his eyes. "What are you talking about? The current carbon dioxide concentration in the cabin is 0.1% higher than normal. It's strange that you can feel it. It's purely psychological." Bruno smiled awkwardly and squatted down to help Andrew drag out the big box. After the box was opened, the three astronauts looked at the brand new air circulation equipment inside, and a hint of relief flashed in their eyes. "I remember that the air circulation equipment needs to be replaced outside the Mars cabin, right?" Andrew frowned as he found the carbon dioxide absorption device from it. "It seems that we have to go out of the cabin again." Mars cabin number 5 is the only channel between the Mars cabin and the outside world. The airlock cabin plays a huge role when leaving the cabin. The airlock cabin can ensure that the cabin has the same air pressure as the Martian atmosphere when entering the cabin. The airlock cabin can ensure that the cabin has normal atmospheric pressure. These 2 points not only ensure the safety of the Mars cabin, but also the safety of the astronauts. Andrew and Bruno, wearing bulky silver-white spacesuits, looked at each other through the arc-shaped glass masks. The next moment, Andrew reached out and pressed the button on the console. Beep. Pressure. Balancing. Pressure. Balanced. As the green light came on, Andrew squatted slightly and grabbed the outer gate leading to Mars at the end of the airlock with both hands. Chapter 122: The difficult and long drilling work. Beep. The buzzer sounded again. The red light on the detector lit up again. Zaya reached out numbly and cleaned up the ice soil mixture spread on the detector. Still no discovery. Seeing Zaya stiff movements from the corner of his eye, Bayexan smiled bitterly and asked on the radio. Zaya sighed slightly, stretched out her hand to put the next batch of test samples into the detector, and shook her head and said, "Not yet. How many meters underground now?" Bayexan raised his eyelids slightly and glanced at the LCD display on the drill in front of him. "From the surface, it's already 25 meters. 25 meters. Zaya's tone was full of surprise. "It's so deep, and you haven't dug into the real ice layer yet." Bayexan smiled bitterly and shook his head, sighing deeply. "I think we've made a wasted trip this time. Who would have thought that the surface filling at the bottom of this deadly crater is nearly 20 meters thick?" Bayexan's voice was full of resentment. "I think Professor Lu would be stunned if he knew this news." Zaya looked at the drilling steel pipe with only 5 meters left in silence. "So, we worked for a long time, but it's equivalent to drilling only 5 meters underground." Bayexan laughed awkwardly. "Ahem, you can say that, Zaya." Suddenly, Hang Fan's exclamation came from the radio. "Captain, stop chatting. The drilling machine seems to have hit the ice layer." Looking at the drilling steel pipe whose descent speed was obviously reduced, Hang Fan and Bayexan showed some surprise in their eyes. 20 minutes later, ding, as usual, the red indicator light ruthlessly illuminated Zaya's numb face through the glass mask. She mechanically swept the dirt mixed with more ice in front of her to the side. Seeing Zaya's action, Bayexan sighed deeply. "Captain, what should we do now?" Hang Fan straightened up, gently rubbed his sore lower back with his hands, and whispered, "Do you want to report to Professor Lu?" Bayexan pondered for a moment and shook his head. "It's not to this point yet. We have only drilled one hole so far. Let's continue." After all, when we set out, Professor Lu said that this might be an extremely difficult and long job. Outside the Mars cabin there are 2 small moons hanging high above Mars at night. That is Phobos and Deimos compared with the moon. Although Phobos and Deimos are closer to Mars, only 9,000 kilometers and 23,000 kilometers respectively, they are smaller in size, only 1% of the moon. Therefore, the 2 often cannot reflect sunlight to the surface of Mars. Even in some higher latitude areas, these 2 small satellites are not visible at all. As soon as he walked out of the Mars cabin, Andrew subconsciously looked up at the sky. When he saw the 2 particularly bright large stars in the night sky, he could not help but freeze in his tracks. "Look, we are lucky. We actually saw Phobos and Deimos at the same time." Andrew's Eyes flashed with excitement. But soon, this excitement turned into regret. Unfortunately, the sunlight reflected by Phobos and Deimos, as well as the starlight from the infinitely distant stars, could not illuminate the solemn night of Mars. Okay, let's talk about our feelings later. Don't forget that our oxygen is only enough to support 3 hours of extravehicular activities. Bruno dragged the carbon dioxide absorption equipment and toolbox out of the circular gate with great effort. Hey, Andrew, can you turn on the searchlight quickly? I can't even see the road. Bruno's unpleasant complaints interrupted Andrew's thoughts. He turned his head helplessly to look at Bruno behind him, raised his hand, and turned on the high-intensity searchlight. The searchlight was very bright, but it only illuminated the little space in front of the two people. In the endless darkness, this incandescent light seemed a little dim and weak. After setting up the searchlight, Andrew reached out and grabbed the toolbox beside him, walked to the area where the air circulation equipment was loaded, and skillfully removed the metal protective shell on the surface of the Mars cabin. Joey, has the air circulation equipment been suspended? To be on the safe side, Andrew asked Joey in cabin number 1 via radio. Soon, Joey's response came to his ears. It has stopped. Andrew closed his eyes slightly, and the scenes of the original training flashed quickly in his mind. After recalling the operation process, he picked up the tools one by one and slowly disassembled the air circulation equipment. When he saw the carbon dioxide absorber, he couldn't help but stand there. The surface of the carbon dioxide absorber was full of red Martian dust. The cause of the failure has been found, Andrew said softly. It is estimated that NASA did not do a good job of sealing. The carbon dioxide absorber is full of Martian dust. TSK. Bruno's smacking sound came from the radio. I said NASA is unreliable. What should we do now? We don't even know where the sealing problem is. Andrew's eyes were full of helplessness, and he sighed deeply. What else can we do? Let's install the replacement equipment today and wait for the response from Houston. As he spoke, Andrew installed a spare carbon dioxide absorber. After restoring all the equipment, Andrew said again, Joy, start the air circulation equipment and see if it can work normally. After a few minutes, no response. Joy, Andrew's eyes twitched slightly, and he said again, Joy, are you there? The next moment, a panicked voice sounded in the headphones inside the helmet. Damn it, Andrew, the air circulation is still not working properly. It's still the same problem. The carbon dioxide absorption device is wrong. Andrew's heart sank. Could it be that Martian dust has invaded the inside of the equipment? He took a deep breath and said calmly, Joy, don't panic. Maybe this replacement device is also broken. I'll try another one. With the experience just now, Andrew's replacement movement was obviously much faster this time. Half an hour later, Joy, start the air circulation again. A few seconds later, Joey's crying voice came. Andrew, it still doesn't work. Carbon dioxide absorber failure. Hearing Joey's crying words, Andrew's heart was like a stone, sinking lower and lower in the water. Andrew's hands trembled slightly as he disassembled the air circulation device again. This time, he raised the flashlight and carefully checked the fault. When a hidden gap and a red rock the size of a fist appeared in front of him, Andrew held his breath for a moment. It's over. These two words flashed through his mind. You too. Something might have happened to us. Andrew took a deep breath and said solemnly, if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123 Misfortunes Never Come Alone. Andrew's voice reached the ears of two teammates over the radio. Bruno and Joey's breaths suffocated slightly, and a trace of panic flashed in their eyes. Andrew? What's going on? There was a bit of vibrato in Bruno's voice. Andrew stood up slowly and shook his head with a bitter look on his face. A Martian rock destroyed the air circulation equipment. What I saw alone was a gap more than 10 centimeters long. It's probably because we didn't pay attention when deploying the Mars module, or maybe there was something wrong with NASA's design in this regard. Silence fell over the radio channel point. Bruno on the side trembled slightly and suddenly raised his head to look at Andrew in front of him point through the glass mask. Andrew clearly saw Bruno's pale face and bloodless, slightly trembling lips. The next moment, Bruno reached out and grabbed Andrew's arm, growling with horror on his face. Didn't NASA equip us with 2 air circulation device accessories? Why don't we put the damage? Andrew shook his head and directly interrupted Bruno's question. As much as I would like to say it can be replaced, the reality is, the gap is in the base component of the air circulation equipment, and there is no way to fix it unless we remove the entire thing and replace it. NASA should not have considered the problems we encountered. It is equipped with some important detachable parts. We did not replace the basic parts that cannot be disassembled. As he spoke, a trace of bitterness appeared on Andrew's face point. While carefully restoring the various parts to their original state, he sighed and said, "Get ready to contact NASA, everyone. Our journey to Mars may end here. Earth 3:15 AM. US time. Point Houston Ground Command Center. Pathfinders. Call Houston. Pathfinders call Houston." The quiet command center suddenly heard a sound with a strong sound of electricity. "We're in some trouble." Hearing the message coming from the radio, Professor Chris, who was originally drowsy, suddenly trembled. His lips parted slightly, and a look of disbelief flashed in his eyes. Without any time to think about it, he directly grabbed the phone beside him and dialed Director Moulton's number. More than 2 hours later, inside the White House conference room. Albert sat on the main seat of the conference table with a gloomy expression, stretched out his hand and rubbed his tired face. "So, our Pathfinder plan is going to be interrupted, Director." Moulton nodded gloomily. "That's right. The Mars capsule, after the air circulation equipment is damaged, is no longer suitable for habitation. In order to ensure the safety of the 3 astronauts, I have ordered them to enter the return capsule." As he said that, Moulton raised his wrist and looked at his watch. "If everything is normal, they should have taken off by now." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a rapid knock on the door. Albert frowned slightly and turned to look at the conference room door. "What's going on? Is there anyone interrupting such an important meeting?" Moulton's eyes moved slightly. He stood up from his chair and whispered, "Your Excellency, perhaps there is good news from the ground command center in Houston." Albert was silent for a moment, nodded solemnly, and squeezed out a slightly dull response from his throat. "Let him come in." After receiving permission, Moulton quickly turned around and left his seat, opening the door to the conference room with a faint smile on his lips. "M.O. Director Moulton, something happened to the return capsule Mars. After receiving the order to return, the 3 astronauts brought some important supplies and entered the return capsule one by one. After fastening his seatbelt, a faint flash of excitement flashed across Bruno's face. "To be honest, I even want to thank that Raj's air circulation device." Bruno rubbed his hands gently and whispered, "If it weren't for it, we would have stayed on this damn Mars for more than a month." Andrew looked at his teammates with a strange expression. "What? Don't you think so?" Bruno obviously noticed Andrew's gaze. Andrew coughed slightly, his expression getting weirder. "That's what I said, but there's one thing you may have forgotten. There is audio and video equipment in this return capsule." Bruno. Ahem. Bruno coughed hard twice and changed the subject with a smile. "Captain, should we get ready to set off?" The corner of Andrew's mouth twitched, and he checked it with a look of helplessness. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he took a deep breath and reached out to turn a few buttons on the console. "Watch out, I'm on fire." Hearing Andrew's reminder, the 2 teammates immediately stopped smiling a little and got ready to take off with solemn expressions. 3, 2, 1, ignite. A vibration came from the soles of my feet. Just as everyone was preparing to withstand the coming force, the vibration suddenly disappeared. There was silence in the return cabin. "Captain? Captain?" Joey's voice sounded on the radio. "Are you sure you have started the engine?" Andrew was stunned, with a hint of doubt in his eyes. "Didn't he press it just now?" "He should have pressed it, right, but why is there no movement?" Andrew's small eyes revealed a big doubt. I press it again." As he said. Andrew reached out to press the engine start button in front of him again. A few seconds later, looking at the strange looks of his two teammates, a trace of cold sweat suddenly appeared on Andrew's forehead. I pressed it. I really pressed it, he said. Andrew pressed the start button hard several times. No reaction at all. Looking at Andrew's actions, the faces of the two teammates suddenly changed. Andrew? Are you kidding? Bruno swallowed slightly. Did you get the steps wrong? Bruno's questioning made Andrew's face flush instantly. He didn't say anything, but just repeated the operation just now. Oh my god. Joe's eyes pupils dilated a little, and he muttered to himself, we can't be so unlucky. Shit. Andrew, wearing a bulky spacesuit, sat down on the dusty ground on Mars through the glass mask. You can see that at this moment, his facial expression is extremely distorted. Damn. NASA, how can it be so unreliable? Bruno and Joe stood aside in silence, staring blankly at the slightly worn return capsule in front of them, which had been attacked by the wind and sand of Mars for more than a month. Chapter 124 Give Up Rescue. Earth. The White House conference room and the United States. Morton stood there in a daze, obviously not recovering from the shocking news just now. The return capsule. Something went wrong. His expression was a little distorted, and he grabbed the collar of the staff member in front of him and shouted, what happened? Facing the hideous face of Morton, the staff member hesitantly explained, Director Morton, Chief Morton, I heard from Houston that it seems that the hydraulic system of the engine exceeded the preset limit when ignited, and the main control computer of the Mars capsule automatically cut off the operation of the engine according to the preset program. Morton's expression suddenly choked. This, even if he knew nothing about the Mars return capsule, he knew that this thing was not so easy to solve. Can it be solved? Morton took a few deep breaths and calmed down. The staff was silent for a moment and shook his head slowly. I'm sorry, sir. Houston said that there is basically no possibility of remote repair, as if afraid that Morton would not believe it. The staff member added again, this is what Professor Chris said. Morton looked at the staff in front of him with his eyes blank. For a long time. He gently loosened his hands and turned back to his seat in a daze. The atmosphere in the conference room became more and more dull. After dozens of seconds of silence, Albert, who was sitting in the main seat, coughed lightly, breaking the silence of the conference room. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to change the topic of discussion now. The United States. Do you want to carry out a rescue mission for the 3 astronauts? The moment the voice fell, everyone in the room breathed a little faster. Everyone who attended the meeting looked at each other eagerly, hoping that someone would take the lead and say something. Albert, who had not received a response for a long time, frowned slightly and directly called Morton's name. Morton, as the director of NASA, these 3 astronauts are your people. Tell me, should we save them? Morton's pupils shrank slightly. This is not an easy question to answer. Saving means a lot of material and manpower, no matter which one. The United States today is a little unaffordable. Don't save. That's 3 lives, not to mention the long-term impact. The most basic thing is, will NASA astronauts dare to carry out missions in the future? A trace of entanglement flashed in Morton's eyes. Mr. President, he slowly lowered his head and whispered, I think the United States needs to implement a rescue operation. They are heroes of the United States. We can't let them down. Since the founding of the United States, we have never given up our citizens. After the voice fell, the conference room fell into silence again. Albert's slightly thick fingers gently tapped the conference table in front of him. Morton subconsciously raised his head and glanced at Albert's face. Seeing Albert's frown, Morton's heart trembled. It's broken. As expected. The next second, Albert sighed deeply and a helpless look appeared on his face. Morton, I know what you mean, but at present, we want to build another spacecraft that can go to Mars to implement the rescue plan, which will take at least 1 year. The 3 astronauts can't hold on until we rescue them. So, Mr. President, Morton interrupted Albert's words directly, we can ask Zaya for help. At present, Zaya's Zuan second is just 1,000 meters away from them. As long as we, Albert's eyes showed a trace of anger. He shouted, Morton, the United States will never ask Zaya for help unless I step down. Otherwise, this matter is out of the question. The meeting ended unhappily. The final result was naturally to abandon the rescue plan. In other words, the 3 astronauts became real abandoned children. As for domestic public opinion, Albert has issued an order to block all channels for the spread of this news. Morton walked on the way to the office with a trace of pity in his eyes. He still remembered what Andrew said when he came to NASA for training. Andrew, why do you want to participate in the Pathfinder program? Is it because of money? Yes, sir. You may not know the lives of people like us. The bitter expression on Andrew's face when he said this was deeply ingrained in his heart. This reward of $500,000 can give my children and wife a safe and stable living environment. Then, have you ever thought that you can't come back? Andrew was silent for a while, and the smile on his face became more bitter. If you can't come back, you can't come back. But, sir, can the pension be more? Not only Andrew, but even Bruno and Joe. I expressed similar meanings. Scenes flashed in Morton's mind. He bit his back teeth hard, and a touch of madness flashed in his eyes. Houston Ground Command Center. A mobile phone ring woke up Professor Chris. Because of the Pathfinder incident, he didn't get a good night's sleep the entire night. He rubbed his slightly swollen eyes and took out his cell phone from his pocket. Molten. Professor Chris was suddenly refreshed when he saw the name displayed on the phone screen. He quickly pressed the answer button. Director, Rescue Plan, Morton's gritted teeth came from the other end of the phone. Professor, they gave up. Professor. Chris's breath suddenly choked, and he subconsciously asked, give up? Give up what? The president has given up the rescue plan. Morton said word by word, and forbid us to ask Xiago for help. The moment he heard Morton's words, Chris felt as he sat back in his chair and muttered to himself, how could this happen? This is murder, Professor. Chris's sharp voice reached Morton's ears through the phone. I want to expose it to the media. Professor, the president has ordered the blocking of all information dissemination channels. Do you know what this means? Chris's face was pale. He stretched out his hands to cover his eyes and said with a little sob, but they are still waiting for me to provide them with a plan. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't tell them this news. A line of hot tears slowly slid down his cheeks. The microphone was silent, with only a little rustling background noise. Professor Morton took a deep breath. I need your help. I have a plan. Chapter 125. Yongchang must help the place Mars because of a problem with the air circulation equipment in the Mars cabin. The 3 astronauts were forced to stay in the return cabin. Fortunately, the return cabin was stocked with supplies for a 2-month interstellar journey. Except for the narrow space, there were no other disadvantages. Calling. Pathfinder. Pathfinder received. Please reply. The voice of Professor Chris suddenly came from the radio in the return cabin. Andrew, who had been keeping silent with his head down, suddenly had a few bright lights in his eyes. When he heard the call, he grabbed the radio equipment and responded excitedly. Pathfinder received. Pathfinder received. Then, there was another long waiting time. Just when the 3 astronauts were getting a little anxious, the radio equipment sounded again. Everyone, I have a bad news for you. The United States has given up the rescue mission for you, and even banned us from sending a distress message to our country. The 3 astronauts' faces changed drastically. How could this happen? Bruno's breathing was rapid, and his pupils dilated a few points instantly. Damn it, have we been abandoned? Andrew looked at the radio equipment in front of him with a gloomy face. When he saw the indicator light on it working, he was stunned, and hurriedly stopped Bruno's complaints. Be quiet, Bruno. The professor hasn't finished yet. After dozens of seconds of silence, Professor Chris's voice sounded again. However, compared with the previous voice, this time it was particularly weak and vague. Andrew, if you want to return to Earth, you can only send a distress message to Unfathomable in person. We can't send a message to Xiago at present. Everything depends on you. Tell Unfathomable that if possible, it's better to let Xiago announce this matter. With the pressure of public opinion, you will feel better when you come back. I'm leaving the Houston Ground Command Center. Remember, there is no need to respond to this communication. The Signal light of the radio equipment went out. The return capsule fell into a dead silence again. A few minutes later, Andrew slowly exhaled a breath of turbine air and whispered, "What should we do? Should we ask Xiago for help?" Andrew's question instantly drew the eye rolls of his two teammates. "What are you talking about? Why do you want to die on Mars?" Andrew smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I'm just a little worried about our situation after we go back. If Bruno on the side shrugged gently, "Let's talk about the rest later. If it doesn't work, we will apply for Xiago's citizenship. I believe that with our Mars experience, Xiago will want us." Bruno stood up while speaking, put on the helmet placed aside, put the oxygen cylinder on his back, and whispered, "We should get ready to go. The bottom of the ZHZ-72 crater. Oh my god." Hung Fan sat down on the red surface of Mars. "Damn it, such a big crater. How long will it take us to finish it?" Looking at the drilling holes that appeared every 100 meters in front of him, the corners of his mouth twitched violently. "Captain, Professor Liu is not fooling us, right?" Bay Yixen stopped what he was doing and said helplessly, "Whether Professor Liu is fooling us or not, I can only tell you one fact. The materials inside Zuan second can at least support us for a month." Hung Fan, "Captain, the radio device has received a communication request. Looking at the frequency band, it should be sent from the US Mars cabin." Just as Hung Fan got up and prepared to go to the next drilling site with Bayixen, Zaiwanai's slightly solemn voice came from the helmet. Bayixen was slightly stunned and said in a deep voice, "I'll be there soon." A few minutes later, Bayixen looked at the radio equipment with a deep doubt in his eyes. "It's this American stupid. Why are you looking for us for no reason?" Hung Fan sat on the chair carelessly and said indifferently, "Captain, you pick it up and listen." Bay Yixen's face was uncertain. After all, just yesterday, Professor Liu sent a message specifically asking them not to continue to stir up trouble. "Yes, Captain, people are here. We have to listen, right?" Zaiwanai's voice sounded at the side. Bayixen smiled bitterly and glanced at his teammates, slowly shaking his head. "You guys, you just want to watch the fun all day long." As he spoke, he reached out and pressed the switch of the radio communication. "This is Zaya Country Zuan number 2. Please speak." A few minutes later, Bayixen looked at his teammates with a strange look on his face. "Ahem. We need to ask for instructions on this issue." "Wait a moment, Zaya Country." Liu Yongchang sat quietly in the office, writing and drawing on the rough paper in front of him with a pen in his hand without any pause. Knock, knock, knock. A rapid knock on the door came. "Come in," Liu Yongchang said directly without raising his head. "Academician Fang, why are you here?" Su Yutang on the side hurriedly stood up and prepared to make tea for Fang Zhu. "Ahem, Yutang, please go out for a while. Professor Liu and I have something to discuss." Fang Zhu's slightly strange tone attracted LV Yongchang's attention. When Su Yutang left, LV Yongchang frowned and asked, "Brother Zhu, what's so weird?" Fang Zhu's face became more and more strange. "Yongchang, if I say that the US Mars cabin has an accident and the 3 astronauts are now asking us for help, do you think it's credible?" Puff. Cough, cough, cough. LV Yongchang's face flushed, and he coughed hard a few times, looking at Fang Zhu in surprise. "Huh? What did you say?" Facing LV Yongchang's question, Fang Zhu shrugged lightly and pointed to the sky helplessly. "That's not what I said." Bay Yixen said. "Why don't they ask NASA for help?" LV Yongchang took a deep breath and asked after calming down his mood. Fang Zhu was silent for a moment. "It is said that NASA, no, the United States has given up on them." LV Yongchang's pupils shrank suddenly. "What should we do now? Should we help?" Fang Zhu's eyes were full of confusion. "I heard from Bayixen that Albert seems to have banned NASA from asking us for help. If we intervene at this time, the consequences." Hearing this, Liu Yongchang, who was still a little hesitant, smiled. Tell Bayixen to go and save people now. My 358th Regiment, ahem. I, Liu Yongchang, must help the situation." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.